What's the deal with anuses? Is it true that at one point in our development we were all nothing more than an anus? What exactly is it even for? What's it made of? And how is this all connected to an unexploded World War I artillery shell? Well, hold on to your butts, because we're about to answer all these burning questions and more. Hey, you in the back, stop giggling. This is a serious scientific video. The word anus is actually derived from Latin and translates to ring or circle in English. We've all got one, and let's be honest here, we all know what they're for. The anus, well, for humans and most animals alike, plays a vital role in our digestive systems as well as, well, let's just say what comes after for now. Despite everyone on the planet owning one, talking about the anus and its functions can often be considered something of a taboo, and even a disgusting topic to some. That can lead to some of us even feeling shame or disgust at ourselves if we develop certain disorders or conditions that affect the anus, which in turn can cause it to become a difficult topic to broach when seeking medical assistance for those problems. Just like developing our understanding of any other part of our bodies, getting to grips with the anus can allow us to better appreciate its significance and eliminate any misconceptions we might have. As somebody who owns an anus, you might already know the primary bodily function of the anus is to regulate the exit of feces from the body. In order to do this, an anus is located at the end of the rectum. Hold on a moment. Aren't those the same thing? Well, while you might have heard them used interchangeably, either as insults or for some highbrow jokes, the anus and the rectum are actually two distinct parts of the digestive system. Speaking of which, let's take a look at the whole process to get an idea of exactly how the anus functions as part of this important bodily function. You see, as many of you are already aware, your digestive system has both a small and a large intestine. These are the two large tubes that perform a process known as peristalsis. This is the name given to the movement of the inner walls of those hollow internal organs. Both the small and the large intestines contain a layer of muscle in order to move food and liquid through your gastrointestinal tract. As the muscle behind all the food you consume contracts, it squeezes all that food forward, while the portion of the muscle in front relaxes, allowing everything you've eaten and drank to pass through it. Once you've eaten or drank something, you might not give much thought to where it goes once it's no longer in your mouth. But from there, it travels down your esophagus, which also performs this process of peristalsis. The reason you've never noticed is because it's completely automatic. Your brain sends electrical signals through your body to the relevant parts involved in specific biological and physiological processes, meaning it all takes place without you ever having to think about it. That's also how food passes from your esophagus through your lower esophageal sphincter, a ring of muscle that's essentially the door to your stomach, designed to let in what you eat, while also preventing your potentially harmful stomach acid from getting out. Your stomach, as you probably know, is responsible for mixing your eaten foods with acids that break it down as part of the digestive process. These resultant contents are known as chyme, and that's what then gets passed through your small intestine. There, the muscles of your small intestine add further digestive juices from certain organs like your pancreas and your liver. They'll also extract and absorb water and nutrients from your food and add those to your bloodstream. Next, the leftover waste products are moved into your large intestine as the process of peristalsis continues. Any of the waste going through the large intestine, normally consisting of undigested food, excess fluid, and even your old cells from the lining of your gastrointestinal tract, changes into, well, the end result. That waste continues from your intestines to your colon, which is made of much the same stuff, namely layers of muscle and tissue with glands that can absorb and secrete different substances. After going through the length of the colon, food waste then heads to the rectum, and now you're going to find out the difference. You see, the rectum is located at the lower end of your large intestines, which are long continuous tubes that also include your colon and the anus. Your rectum is where the food that's been reduced to solid waste is stored. Once it arrives, the rectum stores the waste and absorbs any remaining water until the time comes to release it. Think of it as the last stop right at the end of the line before the train that leaves and heads off toward its shed. It's a journey that starts when your food enters your mouth and terminates when it gets to the last 6 inches or so of your large intestine. Once it arrives there, it just has to wait for one last signal before it's able to make its final departure. Your rectum is connected to an anal canal, where your food makes its eventual exit from your body. As the remaining waste passes from your colon and then into your rectum, it collects there until your nerve endings trigger your urge to, well, there's no nice way to say this, but your urge to poop. When that waste matter moves into the rectum, nerve receptors located there will send signals to your brain, alerting you that you need to evacuate the waste, or if it's just gas. If it's the latter, then your brain knows it's safe to expel it without issue. Well, that's not always a basket of roses for whoever happens to be sitting next to you. If it's time to get rid of the waste, those same nerves will let you know to get moving to the nearest bathroom. Similarly, the anus has a high concentration of nerve endings, making it a highly sensitive area of the body. This sensitivity can vary from person to person, but typically the anal canal continues on from your rectum, making up the last few centimeters of the large intestine. The anus consists of a ring of muscle and actually has several other important muscles that aid in its function. The anal canal is surrounded by these ring-like muscles that are called sphincters that are designed to control your bowel movements. Both of those, the external and internal sphincters, are located at the anus. The external one is voluntary, meaning it can be contracted or relaxed at will, while the internal sphincter does so involuntarily. The canal is also lined with a mucous membrane, a thin layer of moist tissue containing glands that produce mucus, a slippery fluid that can help that waste to make its dramatic exit. And from there, well, you don't need us to tell you what happens. Let's instead talk about some other things that you might not know about the anus. The anus is actually part of your body's most powerful group of muscles, along with the gluteus maximus, the gluteus medius, and the gluteus minimus. Much like other muscles in the body, the anus possesses a degree of elasticity, meaning it can stretch and then return to its original state. This allows our muscles to carry out their specific function, and the anus is no exception. That also means, again, just like the other muscles, the more you exercise it, the stronger it can get. Pilates is actually a great way to strengthen your pelvic floor muscles, which the anus is connected to. Now, as we mentioned before, largely given the role it plays in our digestion, the anus is socially considered to be a taboo part of the body. As a result, you might often hear some people refer to it using slang terminology. There are well over 50 different colloquial terms for the anus, many of which are considered to be so vulgar that they're actually considered curse words, which means that we can't cite a lot of them as examples for this video. We're already on thin ice as it is right now. Some of the slightly more esoteric ones are phrases like ring piece and starfish. We'll stop with those two before we get ourselves demonetized. Depending on the context, some of those slang terms can be considered positive, negative, or even downright nasty and vitriolic. While to some it's often considered to be something of a funny body part, hence the use of profane slang to refer to it, it's also an incredibly important part of our anatomy and shouldn't be joked about in a scientific context. Speaking of how important the anus is, did you know that without one, you could possibly die? If not, you would certainly live in a lot of discomfort. You might have heard that the anus is normally one of the first parts of the body to develop when humans begin as embryos in the womb, meaning that at some point everyone was just an asshole. Jokes aside, that's not strictly true. Humans are similar to an evolutionary branch of animals known as deuterostomes. The defining characteristic of deuterostomes is that their anus does form before their mouth while they're an embryo. This can be found in a number of creatures in the animal kingdom, including any vertebrates, animals with a spinal column, and in particular starfish, sea urchins, and sea cucumbers. In the case of sea cucumbers, their anus isn't just an exit for digestive waste, it's also a mouth, used for eating algae, and a defensive weapon that can launch a stringy web of internal organs at underwater predators, and its main way of breathing. Sea cucumbers are considered to be just a multi-function Swiss Army knife-style anus that just happens to have a body around it. On the other hand, human beings evolved in such a way that we no longer follow the same pattern of deuterostomes. In human embryos, the mouth forms first during the 4th week of development. 4 weeks later, this is then followed by the anus, and the two are connected by a gut tube that would have already formed between them. However, sometimes human babies can in fact be born without an anus as a result of a birth defect, known as an imperforate anus. This affects 1 in around every 5,000 newborn babies and can occur alongside other abnormalities that affect the rectum and the anus. While we don't exactly know what causes an imperforate anus, it can manifest in a number of alarming ways. Some imperforate anuses result in a complete absence of an anal opening, while others cause the formation of an anus but in the wrong place on the body, usually a lot smaller than it needs to be. In some instances, something called a cloaca develops, which is when the anus, urethra, and other openings are all combined into a singular one. Naturally, this can lead to a whole host of problems for a newborn, with the most worrying one being that without an anus, an infant can't expel their waste, which, if you or anyone you know has kids, you'll know it happens a lot. This, alongside possible infections as a result of the birth defect, can lead to early health complications and even death if the newborn isn't treated ASAP. This is a good time to mention the waste expelling process and how we learn about it. During our earliest stages of life, our brains haven't learned how to properly control our digestive and excretory systems yet. For older children and adults, this is like second nature. We know when our bodies are telling us we need to go, and we can even control the muscles of the anus to stop ourselves if we aren't able to get to a bathroom quickly. For infants and even some adults who develop certain neurological or muscular disorders as they grow older, that level of control just isn't possible. This is a big problem for someone born with an imperforate anus. As their large intestine doesn't end with an opening, it essentially just becomes a pouch. This can cause the waste to collect internally within the large intestine. If it stays there, it can cause vomiting or even make the abdomen swell up. The only way to treat an imperforate anus is with urgent surgery, which will create a new opening for the waste to pass through. While this surgery can differ, it typically involves 3 stages. The first is a procedure called a colostomy, where a stoma needs to be created. This is an external opening that brings the intestine out from under the skin. Waste is passed through the stoma into a bag that has to be worn outside the body. Yes, we know how unpleasant that sounds, but try to remember, it has to be even more uncomfortable for those unfortunate enough to have to live with one. The second part of the surgical process is called an anoplasty. This involves creating a new opening, a new anus in the usual place, and pulling the rectum down to meet it. If someone with an imperforate anus also has a fistula, a connection between the intestine and the bladder or the urethra, then that also needs to be closed off. Then after several months, once the new anus has healed, a third procedure is performed to close the stoma. While this is normally done while the person is still a baby in order for their body to adjust and for the digestive system to begin functioning properly as soon as possible, that doesn't always happen. One man in China had to go a whole 55 years without an anus in the proper place. A farmer from Hubei province named Wu was unable to afford the necessary operation until he reached his later years, which means that for half a century he had to make do with a small surgical hole around half a centimeter in diameter. He only had a stoma, part of the colostomy that makes up the initial surgical fix for an imperforate anus. Wu also had to squeeze waste out by hand, which of course sounds like a horrific and messy way to use the bathroom. He had to pay close attention to exactly what foods he ate in order to avoid constipation and use laxatives to evacuate his bowels thoroughly. In something of a happy ending though, not only did his condition not prevent Wu from getting married and having children, but he also did undergo surgery to fix the defect after 5 decades without proper treatment. As the anus is an orifice that leads directly into your body, naturally it makes it a site for potential infection. There are a number of diseases that can potentially affect this part of your body, including anal cancer, anal fissures, which is where the lining of the anus tears, anal warts or abscesses, sexually transmitted infections, and hemorrhoids, dilated, twisted blood vessels in the walls of the anus or rectum. Given just how easy it can be to develop illnesses and infections like these, it's important to practice good hygiene when it comes to the anus. Cleaning it should be done with care, either by wiping the exterior or rinsing it with water. Occasionally, some people decide to remove the naturally occurring hair that develops around the anus during puberty. Brazilian waxing, trimming, or even shaving are all ways to do this, as well as bleaching that can lighten the darker look of the anus. Speaking of showing your anus some appreciation, it often has an essential role in sexuality. For many consenting adults of varying gender identities and sexual orientations, sexual activity that involves stimulating the anus is considered an enjoyable experience. For some, the anus is actually an erogenous zone, the areas of the body most affected by enjoyable sensations. Not everyone's erogenous zones are the same, but the anus is among one of the most common. But be careful what you do down there, because according to a study conducted by some scientists in New York, a staggering 4,000 Americans are taken to the hospital every year with objects lodged up their anus and stuck in their rectum. This isn't exclusively related to sexuality either, with objects ranging from marbles and bottles to stationery and even drugs. Some examples include a shampoo bottle, chicken bones, an oven mitt, a light bulb, and a water balloon. The analysis these scientists carried out revealed that almost 40,000 people were admitted to the hospital emergency departments for injuries like this between the years 2012 and 2021. In 8 out of 10 cases, the patients were men, with those in their 20s and early 30s making up a third of all those visits to the emergency room. But we know you want to hear about the craziest stories like this. Well, in 2022, an elderly man was admitted to the hospital with an undetonated World War I bomb lodged up his anus and in his rectum. No, really, we're not making this up. The man was 88 at the time when he was admitted to the Hospital Saint-Meus in Toulon, southern France, with an 8-inch artillery shell that had found an unlikely target. It even triggered a bomb scare at the hospital, but luckily, bomb disposal experts were able to determine that the shell was unlikely to explode while it was still lodged inside the man. Fortunately for him, the doctors were able to remove the bomb from its confinement without any explosive incident occurring. After all, we've said thus far that you might think the anus is an inherently dirty or germ-ridden part of the body, but it is very much worth remembering that as long as you maintain a good standard of hygiene, then that simply won't be the case. In fact, it's worth remembering that there are actually more germs and bacteria present in your mouth than in your anus. No, really. It's actually a misconception that the types of harmful bacteria that can cause diseases are found in supposedly dirtier places of the body. For one, not all bacteria feed on waste matter. And for another, thanks to all the food that we intake, which could be carrying innocuous bacteria and airborne bacteria breathed in through the mouth, we actually do have more bacteria in our mouths than our anuses. Before you panic, that's not always a bad thing either. Oral bacteria also perform a lot of important functions, and most of the bacteria that enter your gut and reach the anus, harmful or otherwise, only get there because they enter through your mouth. The human body is undoubtedly an incredible thing, but the female body is extra amazing. Not only can the female body grow entire human beings from scratch, ensuring the survival of our entire species in the process, but women's bodies can do plenty of other crazy, impressive, and downright strange things. You won't believe some of these incredible and weird facts about the female body. It's a well-documented fact that women tend to live longer than men. While American men can expect to live until the age of 76, the life expectancy for an American woman is a full 5 years longer at age 81. There are many reasons for the difference in life expectancy between men and women. It's not just that women tend to take less risks than men. One of the major factors is the fact that women are better at fighting off infections than men. The female immune system is stronger than the immune system of men, thanks to the fact that the hormone estrogen suppresses an enzyme that can get in the way of our body's defenses against bacteria and viruses. Women can also thank their higher levels of estrogen for being significantly better at surviving traumatic injuries than men. Women recover faster from their injuries and are more resistant to infection. No one's sure why exactly this is the case, but it might be the female body's way of providing extra protection for any children the women might be carrying. Plus, regular sex can help boost a woman's immune system even more. There's plenty of anecdotal evidence to suggest that men and women think differently, but the science shows that there are actually differences between the male and female brain. For one thing, women regularly outdo men on memory tests. It turns out that women aren't just better at remembering to-do lists, but are also better than men at remembering names and faces. And it's not just remembering faces that women excel at. They're better at reading them too. Women can read emotional cues from facial expressions much more accurately than men, which might be why they tend to be more emphatic on average. Science has also conclusively proven what we already know, that women are better listeners than men. Researchers at the Indiana University School of Medicine used an fMRI machine to track brain activity while participants listened to someone read aloud a passage from a novel. As the men listened, the left side of their brain, the area associated with listening and speech, showed increased activity. Women, however, showed activity in both the left and the right side, the side associated with creativity and expression. In fact, women use both sides of their brain much more often than men do, which could be why they tend to be so much better at multitasking. Women don't just listen better, they're also better with words than men. Women have larger frontal and temporal lobes, the brain regions associated with language skills, which might account for why women speak an average of 20,000 words per day, 13,000 more than the average man speaks in a day. This brings a whole new meaning to the phrase "a man of few words." And in case you were wondering, the science also points to women actually being the more rational sex. So much for that stereotype. However, it's not all good news in the brain department. Period cramps aren't just a physical pain, they also mess with a woman's mind. Cramps and other PMS symptoms can be incredibly distracting. and can temporarily prevent a woman's brain from working at its full potential. Men and women also see the world differently. Literally, a mutation on the X chromosome allows about 40% of women to see a much broader range of colors in the red-orange family, while many men are actually Christmas colorblind, meaning they have a hard time distinguishing between red and green. Women also blink more often than men. And speaking of eyes, it's absolutely true that women cry more often than men. Adult women cry an average of 5.3 times per month, while men average only 1.4 times. But it's not just hormones or the fact that it's more socially acceptable for a woman to cry. There's a biological reason for this too. Women have larger tear ducts than men, and they have 50 to 60% more of the hormone prolactin, which is primarily responsible for lactation but also controls our tears. Neither sex can claim a superior sense of smell, but research shows that women are better at learning and distinguishing different smells. One study even showed that women can tell when their partner is stressed by sniffing one of their dirty t-shirts. Women might have the edge when it comes to taste though, thanks to an abundance of taste buds compared to men. Men may be stronger than women on average, but women can claim more endurance than men. In some studies, women can last up to 75% longer than men in stamina-related exercise. Once again, women can thank their higher levels of estrogen, which makes their muscles more resistant to fatigue, something that definitely comes in handy during childbirth. Women are also more flexible than men thanks to increased levels of elastin in their muscles and tendons, a protein that allows muscles and even organs to stretch. Yet another useful feature during pregnancy and childbirth. Women's bodies are also structurally different than men. The lower part of a woman's spine curves over the last 3 vertebrae versus just the last 2 in men, and they have a greater range of motion in their pelvic area. All of this makes women much more flexible and also helps accommodate the carrying and birthing of a baby. Women's skin is also different from men's. Women's skin is much more sensitive due to being 25% thinner than men's skin. Unfortunately, that also means that women's skin is more prone to wrinkles thanks to a loss of collagen as they age. Women also have more guts than men. Really, the lower part of their colon is longer in women than men. Women also have more stuff crammed into their lower abdomen. Between their digestive tract and their reproductive organs, there's less room for things to expand, which might be why women tend to experience more digestive distress than men. Thankfully, women seem to be pretty good at managing their pain, thanks again to the extra estrogen coursing through their bodies, which acts as a natural pain reliever. However, during some parts of their cycle when estrogen is at its lowest levels, women actually feel more pain than men do. Some studies suggest that women's threshold for pain is actually 9 times stronger than men's. Perception is a big part of it. While men tend to get stressed when thinking about their past pain, women seem to forget about their pain much faster. This might be a protective mechanism to help women forget just how awful childbirth is. Women may be able to handle their pain, but they aren't as good at handling their alcohol as men. And it's not just because women tend to be smaller than men on average. Women have less of the stomach enzymes that break down the ethanol in the alcohol and less water in their bodies to dilute the booze. So even when adjusted for body size, a woman will have a higher blood alcohol content than a man after consuming the same amount of alcohol. Keen observers might have noticed a trend in a lot of these incredible facts about the female body. Many of the things that make women's bodies different than men's have to do with the fact that a woman's body is designed to carry and birth babies. Without a doubt, the ability to grow an entire human from scratch is the most amazing thing about the female body. Some of the weirdest facts about the human body have to do with the reproductive system. A woman is born with all the eggs she will ever have in her lifetime. Before she's even born, a female fetus will have 6 to 7 million eggs, but by the time she's born, that number has already dropped dramatically to just 1 to 2 million eggs. By puberty, she's down to 400,000 eggs, and by her late 30s, a woman will only have 20,000 eggs left. By the time she hits menopause in her 50s, a woman has just 1,000 eggs left in her reproductive system. Once released, an egg can survive for days in a woman's fallopian tubes, and since sperm can survive for up to 5 days in the reproductive tract, we can see why birth control is so popular. The uterus is an incredibly elastic organ. During pregnancy, a woman's uterus grows from the size of an orange to the size of a watermelon in just 9 months, pushing her other organs out of the way and up into a rib cage in the process. During labor, the uterus exerts pressure of nearly 400 pounds per square foot during contractions. During pregnancy, a woman's cervix is tightly closed to keep the baby inside and protected from the outside world. During labor, though, the cervix stretches to become the baby's gateway to the world. To even begin pushing, the cervix must be dilated to 10 centimeters, about the size of a bagel. and it can get even larger to accommodate the baby's head as it's delivered. The average woman will have around 450 periods during her lifetime and will use up to 15,000 menstrual products over her lifespan. Before the invention of the disposable menstrual pad in the 1890s, women used some pretty weird methods to deal with their periods. Women would use rags, cotton, sheep wool, rabbit's fur, even grass to stem the flow of menstrual blood. In ancient Rome and Greece, women would wrap lint around a piece of wood to make homemade tampons. Despite how it might seem, women don't actually lose that much blood during their period. They typically only lose around 4 tablespoons of blood in total over the course of their entire period. That's the not-so-good news about the female reproductive system, but never fear, there's plenty of reproductive advantages to the female body, especially when it comes to sex. Not only is it true that women can have multiple orgasms, but the female clitoris alone has 8,000 nerve endings, more than double the number of nerve endings in the entire penis. The clitoris also serves no biological purpose other than to bring women pleasure. It also grows over time, meaning that sex actually gets better for women the older they get. An orgasm can also help relieve the pain of period cramps. That seems like the least nature could do to make up for the annoyance of periods, the discomfort of pregnancy, and the pain of childbirth. Weirdly, the part of the brain that gets aroused during sex is the very same part of the brain that lights up when a woman is craving a specific food. Although it might be hardly noticeable, one breast is always larger than the other. No woman has perfectly identically sized breasts. This last fact might just be the weirdest of them all. What do sharks and vaginas have in common? Now, this might sound like the setup for a dirty joke, but it's 100% true. The natural lubricant in the vagina is made up of many things, including sweat, mucus, and something called squalene. Squalene is not unique to humans. It's also found in the liver of sharks and is a common ingredient in moisturizers. Recent research also suggests that squalene can help protect skin from the harsh effects of chemotherapy. Who knew that sharks and vaginas had so much in common? Given all the amazing and impressive things that the female body can do, it should come as no surprise that women actually need more sleep than men. Although they tend to follow a more Eastern circadian rhythm and wake up earlier than men on average, women actually require an extra 20 minutes of sleep each night just to keep their amazing bodies going. The human body is truly a marvel, but the female body is a whole other level of impressive, as those weird facts about the female body clearly illustrate. Nipples! Almost everyone has them, regardless of gender. They allow mothers to feed their babies and they can help steam things up a bit in the bedroom. But like every other part of the human body, nipples can be downright weird. On this episode of the Infographic Show, we're looking at weird facts about male nipples. The reason both men and women have nipples is due to how the embryo forms. Several genes determine if a baby is male or female. There's the SRY gene, or sex-determining region Y, which lives on the short arm of the Y chromosome. It's activated when the embryo is about 7 weeks old, and it'll lead to the development of male reproductive organs, while female reproductive organs will disappear. Breasts and nipples form before the SRY gene activates. That's why, regardless of your sex, almost everyone has nipples and a mammary ridge. Now that you have a quick rundown, let's talk about nipples and men. Male nipples can lactate. It's rare, but it definitely happens. Generally, men don't produce enough prolactin, the hormone that stimulates the mammary glands to produce milk. It's not unheard of for prolactin levels to surge in men, though. This can result from hypothyroidism, since it impacts the pituitary gland. Prolactin production in men can also be triggered by medications, like antipsychotics, chlorpromazine, steroids, and heart medication digoxin. It can also occur when men take estrogen or prolactin. If you want to know how to make yourself lactate, there's not a lot of research on the matter. There's also not a ton of research on whether or not the milk that men produce has similar nutritional or immunity-boosting properties as women's breast milk. In one study that has been done, one man who did produce breast milk showed that it had the same concentrations of lactose, proteins, and electrolytes as the colostrum and milk from lactating women. Dr. Chandani Dejour, a neonatal and pediatric hospitalist at Lucille Packard Children's Hospital at Stanford University, said, "There's no evidence to suggest colostrum between cisgender women and other breastfeeding, chest-feeding parents would be different. Nipples can be sensitive. While a lot of people don't consider a man's nipples to be an erogenous zone, nipple stimulation can activate the same parts of the brain as genital stimulation, helping intensify sexual arousal." In a study performed by the Journal of Sexual Medicine, they used magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, to note which areas of the brain become active when women touched various parts of their bodies. The genital sensing brain areas in women roughly correspond to the same areas in men. According to Rutgers University psychologist Barry Komisarek, the nipple finding was a surprise. My speculation is that this could be the basis for many women saying that nipple stimulation is erotogenic because it stimulates the same area as the genitals. Nipples can chafe and bleed during physical activity. Runners already know this one, though. If you're familiar with marathons, you might have witnessed a male runner or two with red streaks running down their chest. Chafing appears to be just a part of a runner's life, the result of friction from skin rubbing against itself or clothing. As men run, their nipples can rub against their shirts and start to bleed. This can happen during other strenuous activities too. If you're a runner and you want to avoid chafing, here are some ideas. If you're able to, take off your shirt or at least try to pull your shirt away from your nipples. It's not efficient, but it can help combat chafing and avoid nipple bleeding. If the damage is already done, you can apply hydrogen peroxide to your nipples after the race. It'll sting, but it'll help. Then apply some antibiotic ointment and put a bandage or gauze over it. If you run often, you might want to invest in nipple guards. Regular bandages might come off when you sweat, but there are nipple guards made for this specific purpose. You should also avoid cotton and wear synthetic or moisture-wicking fabrics. This will minimize irritation. And most importantly, stay hydrated. Hydration can reduce the risk of chafing. When you're dehydrated, it's more difficult for your body to flush away salts from your skin. If you drink plenty of water before, during, and after, you'll be able to sweat freely and it won't dry into salt crystals, which will irritate your skin. Did you know that 1% of men have a third nipple? They're also known as supernumerary nipples. The third nipple, or polymastia or polythelia, is a condition where you can have one or more extra nipples on your body. It's estimated that only about 200,000 Americans have one or more extra nipples, and even though people will only normally have an extra nipple, it is possible to have up to 8. It's also a lot more common in men than in women, most commonly appearing along the, quote, milk line, the area that goes from your armpit and goes down through and past your nipples to your genitals. The best way to tell a third nipple apart from a mole is that third nipples usually have a nipple-like bump on them. While most extra nipples will appear on your milk line, they can also appear anywhere on your body, including hands and feet. If they appear outside of the milk line, they're called an ectopic supernumerary nipple, all of which fall into 6 different categories. Category 1 is when the nipple has an areola around it, and it usually has breast tissue underneath it. The areola is that small circular area of pigmented skin around the nipple. For Category 2, the nipple will have breast tissue under it, but it doesn't have an areola. A Category 3 nipple will have breast tissue, but doesn't have a nipple. Category 4 is when there's breast tissue, but the areola and nipple are absent. Category 5, or pseudomama, has an areola around it, but it just has fat tissue instead of breast tissue. Oh, and how could we possibly forget about Category 6, or polythelia, which will have the nipple appear by itself with no areola or breast tissue. But why do third nipples appear? It all goes back to the embryo. During the 4th week of pregnancy, the milk lines thicken. The milk line is made up of rigid ectoderm tissue, which is tissue that'll become part of your skin. Typically, the milk line stays thick and forms the nipples while the rest of the skin softens. But if it doesn't become regular ectoderm tissue, supernumerary nipples can appear where the tissue remains thick. This is how you can end up with a third nipple. You can have your third nipple removed, but they're mostly harmless. They don't indicate any underlying conditions, and typically they're removed for cosmetic reasons. They can lactate just like your regular nipples, though. You may have noticed that the media usually censors female nipples, while male nipples are allowed to run free. Female nipples have always been made a lot more controversial than male nipples. There have only been a few documented concerns about male nipples, and one of those instances can be traced back to Japan. In 2015, Japan was dealing with insufferably high summer temperatures. As a result, men began to take off their undershirts to beat the heat. Goo, a Japanese search engine, conducted a survey that asked what kind of fashion trend women hate to see from men. The winner was Srachikubi, meaning see-through nipples. Some women even considered it to be sexual harassment, although it's unclear if it actually meets Japan's legal requirements to be considered sexual harassment. This might be why Japan has a summertime industry of nipple concealers for men. Outside of that, nipple censorship is typically reserved for women. Michael Bronski, a professor in the practice of activism and media studies of women, gender, and sexuality at Harvard University, explained, male nudes with nipples and genitals were often meant to embody virtues such as patriotism, steadfastness, moral and emotional strength. Female nudes were more sexualized even as they represented female virtues such as modesty. And of course, statues of women that were not nude Often goddesses or monsters such as Medusa represented male qualities, wisdom in the case of Athena, or male fear of castration such as Medusa. Men can get breast cancer. It's rare, but at least 2,400 men are diagnosed with breast cancer every year. Since everyone is born with at least some breast tissue, that means anyone can get breast cancer. When it does happen to men, it's usually in older men, but it can happen at any age. Never assume you could not get breast cancer because you were a man. For male breast cancer, doctors will typically treat it with surgery to remove the breast tissue. It can also be treated with chemotherapy or radiation therapy. Stay vigilant, and if you notice the signs, check with your doctor. It's always better to be safe than sorry. Symptoms might include a painless lump or thickening of the skin on the chest. In the early stages, you might even notice changes to the skin on your chest. This can be dimpling, puckering, scaling, or even changes in color. Changes in the nipple structure can also be a sign of breast cancer, including skin color or scaling. In rare cases, nipples can even begin to turn inward. If you notice discharge or bleeding from your nipple, it might be a sign of cancer. If you're experiencing any of these symptoms, make an appointment with your doctor immediately. If you're a male, it might not be statistically likely to be cancer, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't be mindful. Nobody really knows what causes male breast cancer. We do know it starts when the cells in the breast tissue develop and changes in their DNA occur. In healthy cells, DNA tells your body to grow and multiply at a set rate and to die at a set time. When cancer cells develop, they change the DNA's instructions. These cells begin to multiply a lot faster than normal cells, while continuing to live for longer compared to healthy cells. This causes an overabundance of cells, leading to the creation of a tumor, which can invade and destroy healthy body tissue. Over time, cancer cells can spread to other parts of the body, which is known as metastatic cancer. There are a few types of breast cancer that can develop in men. Ductal carcinoma begins in milk ducts, or the tubes that connect to the nipple. It's the most common type of breast cancer in men. Lobular carcinoma begins in the milk-producing glands, also known as lobules. Men typically have less lobular cells, so this type of breast cancer is a lot less common in males. There are other types of cancer to watch out for, like Paget's disease of the nipple and inflammatory breast cancer. Paget's disease of the nipple, or Paget's disease of the breast, is a rare form of breast cancer. It starts on the nipple and expands to the areola, but normally affects males over the age of 50, and those diagnosed with it typically have underlying ductal breast cancer. In most cases, it rarely is confined to just the nipple. Possible signs of Paget's disease of the nipple can include flaky or scaly skin on the nipple, crusty, oozing, or hardened skin on the nipple, areola, or both, itching, redness, tingling or burning sensation, straw-colored or bloody nipple discharge, a flattened or inverted nipple, a lump in the breast, or a thickening on the breast. If you happen to be familiar with Paget's disease of the bone, these two diseases are not related. Men can develop gynecomastia, an increase in the amount of breast gland tissue in males. It's typically caused by an imbalance of estrogen and testosterone, and it can affect one or both breasts. Some men develop gynecomastia as newborns, during puberty, or as they get older as a part of normal changes in hormone levels. While it isn't a serious problem, it can be difficult for some men to cope with the condition. It's common to experience pain in the breasts, but it might also make some men feel embarrassed or self-conscious. It can go away on its own, but it can also be treated with medication or surgery. Gynecomastia can also result in puffy or pointy nipples in men. The enlarged tissue will push the nipple and areola outward, and that's what causes it to look puffy or larger than average. Since it's unrelated to chest muscle, men may find that the puffy nipples don't go away even if they lose weight or work out. Men can also experience inverted or oversized nipples. Inverted nipples can cause discomfort, and they can impact self-confidence. Fortunately, this can be corrected through plastic surgery. The process involves the doctor releasing underlying tissue so that it'll point outward like an average nipple. Did you know a man holds the world record for the heaviest weight lifted by nipples? A man known as the Baron is in the Guinness Book of World Records for having lifted 71.87 pounds or 32.6 kilograms with his nipples. The Baron, who is originally from Finland, achieved this on July 19, 2013 at Bush Hall in London, England. In fact, quite a few nipple-related world records are currently held by men. Sage Werbach, or the Great Nippolini, holds the official Guinness World Record for heaviest vehicle pushed by nipples. He was able to pull a 2,179.27 pound or 988.5 kilogram vehicle for 65.62 feet or 20 meters. The event took place on March 25, 2011 on the set of Lo Show de Record in Milan, Italy. And let's not forget Daniele Tuveri, a man from Italy who holds the world record for the longest nipple hair. In March 2013, his areola hair measured at around 6.69 inches, or 17 centimeters. If you were thinking about trying to beat their records, remember that there is an age restriction. You can only receive the record title if you're 16 years of age or older. The Montgomery glands in the nipples were named after a man. Montgomery glands are also known as tubercles and are small sebaceous glands found in the nipple and areola. They secrete an oily or waxy substance that's meant to help lubricate the skin. They're meant to help prevent sore and cracked nipples while breastfeeding, as well as protect babies from germs, and can even guide babies to latch onto the breast through scent. Irish obstetrician William Featherstone Montgomery was the first to describe the areola papule back in 1837. It may not be so shocking that a man would be the first to name them, especially since women were often barred from being involved in the medical sciences for centuries. But men have Montgomery glands too, as the nipple and areola are formed before sexual dimorphism occurs. Male nipples are subject to weird and unexpected injuries, possibly due to the fact that they stick out. In Muskogee, Oklahoma in 2015, Leonard Overcash was helping out a coworker with some yard work when the unexpected happened. A zebra bit off part of his nipple. The zebra had been watching him from behind a nearby fence before reaching out to bite him. Although it is illegal to own an exotic animal in Muskogee, the owner had the zebra for 10 years, claiming that she didn't know she wasn't allowed to have him. According to the owner, she had asked city officials if she needed a permit and received a resounding no. Prior to the whole nipple-biting incident, the zebra hadn't caused any problems. The owner had to pay the man's medical bills, and she was given 30 days to rehome the zebra. Overcash said that the ordeal was painful and traumatizing, but it wasn't long before he was doing much better and he had gotten back to work. Sometimes it takes a little more than mere lost nipples to keep a good man down. Can testosterone determine how much money you'll make? Will falling in love cause you to lose testosterone? Have you ever wondered how big of a role testosterone plays in getting revenge? We'll be answering these questions and more while looking at a number of studies ranging from fascinating to crackpot. Here are some weird facts about testosterone in men. Testosterone, we all have it. It's an anabolic steroid hormone produced by testicles and ovaries, found in humans and animals too. Ovaries make it in much smaller amounts though. Testosterone production ramps up around puberty and begins to fall once you hit 30. While you probably associate it with sex drive and sperm production, it can also affect bone and muscle mass, how men store fat in their bodies, and even impact red blood cell production. If a man's testosterone is abnormally high or low, it can also affect their mental or physical health. There's so much that testosterone does in our bodies. Before we start, let's talk about some of the known basics. What are some of the risks of low levels of testosterone, also known as low T levels? It can decrease your sex drive, drain your energy levels, cause weight gain, cause feelings of depression, make you moody, give you low self-esteem, cause you to grow less body hair, and it can give you thinner bones. That's right, it can thin your bones. We'll talk a little bit more about that very soon. On top of aging, other factors can cause your testosterone to drop, like injury to the testicles or cancer treatments like chemotherapy or radiation. Chronic health conditions like AIDS, kidney disease, alcoholism, and liver cirrhosis can also reduce testosterone production. Okay, that's all fine, but what are the weird facts? Let's get right to it. High testosterone is incredibly rare for men. If you think you're the type who thinks having high testosterone makes you an alpha male, think again. It might just be a sign you have adrenal gland disease or testicular cancer. Or it could mean you're taking steroids to increase your muscle mass. Excess testosterone can lead to acne, excessive body hair, headaches, high blood pressure, and heart and liver problems. It can also weaken your immune system and make you more susceptible to disease. In a Stanford University School of Medicine study, men with high testosterone benefited less from influenza vaccinations than men with lower testosterone levels. It's unclear why men are generally more susceptible to bacterial, viral, fungal, and parasitic infections than women. If you suspect you have unusually high testosterone levels, you should talk to your doctor as soon as possible. You've heard people claim testosterone makes men more aggressive, but studies have come up with contradictory conclusions. In a double-blind study, testosterone was administered to test subjects, and it wasn't found to affect anger, mood, or hostility. However, other studies found it did increase aggression in men, but only men who were already dominant and impulsive. How aggressive testosterone makes you is also tied to a man's cortisol levels. Money and testosterone have a unique relationship. Research from Britain revealed that if financial traders wake up with high testosterone levels, they make more money that day. It's believed that it's because they feel more daring and they're more likely to take risks. If the financial trader has high cortisol levels, a stress hormone, they're more likely to take fewer risks and make less money. But don't get excited just yet. We don't want you to think that if you're going to make money in the markets, you must have a lot of testosterone. Men with too much testosterone are more likely to take irrational risks, and that's when the market crashes. For every boom testosterone creates, it's usually responsible for every bust, too. The relationship between testosterone and money is also impacted by a surprising trait: narcissism. Men with low narcissism who handled money led to increased testosterone levels. On the flip side, highly narcissistic men who managed large amounts of money had a decrease in testosterone levels. It was men who were low in narcissism who were more inclined to take risks with increased testosterone. In short, testosterone's relationship with money and aggressiveness is complicated. It's not as straightforward as you might have initially thought. Testosterone can make men more selfish and antisocial. Men with increased testosterone are 27% more likely to be less generous towards strangers with money. It produced more selfish choices in men, particularly when it involved strangers. But it wasn't just strangers that men became more selfish toward. In a recent study, men were given 150 milligrams of testosterone and a large sum of money. When the researchers asked the men who they would like to share or not share the money with, the men with higher testosterone were less likely to split the money even with people they considered themselves most close to. Researchers discovered that men with increased testosterone levels were more likely to use their own money to punish people they believed were ungenerous toward them. So while it made them less likely to be generous with others, it also made them more likely to punish people for being less generous with them. Sounds a little hypocritical to us, but we don't think hypocrisy was part of the experiment. Similarly, testosterone's been shown to increase the need for revenge. A study at Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management observed that in a business negotiation, men with higher testosterone had a higher desire for retaliation if they believed they were being lowballed. Meat and manliness are considered to go hand in hand. But did you know that men who follow a vegan diet produce higher testosterone levels? Observational studies show that men on a vegan diet had a slight but significant increase in sex hormone-binding globulin and testosterone constructions compared to their meat-eating counterparts. It also lowered their odds of getting cancer. Sex hormone-binding globulin, or SHBG, is a protein your liver makes. It binds tightly to sex hormones in both males and females: estrogen, dihydrotestosterone, and testosterone. It's SHBG that carries them throughout your blood. If you have low levels of SHBG, it can lead to a lot of health issues like type 2 diabetes, hypothyroidism, and acromegaly. Acromegaly is a rare condition that results in too much growth hormone. It can lead to body tissues growing larger over time. If you have high levels of SHBG, it can be related to hepatitis, hyperthyroidism, HIV, or anticonvulsants, which are medicines used to treat seizures. Low levels of testosterone are also linked to sleep apnea. Men with sleep apnea suffer from reduced REM sleep and frequent nighttime awakenings, which lower testosterone levels over time. Some tips for men with low testosterone to get a good night's sleep are not too different from general advice. Sleep consistently, avoid naps, maintain a cool environment, reduce distractions before bed, and limit nicotine, caffeine, and alcohol. Doctors also encourage men with low testosterone levels to avoid using mobile devices and minimize their time playing video games, as well as be active. Make an effort to be active in a natural, green environment. Spending time outdoors has been linked to preventing sleep issues. While we encourage you to be active, overtraining can also be an issue. As much as working out is considered macho, too much can lower your testosterone levels. It might be surprising, but men who engage in intensive exercise can develop low resting testosterone levels and alterations in their hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis and are more likely to display hypogonadism. Hypogonadism is when the body's sex glands produce little to no hormones. And if you're wondering just what the heck hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis is, it refers to the hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and gonadal glands. Since these glands often work in tandem, physiologists and endocrinologists consider finding a term that grouped them all together convenient and descriptive. But just how much is too much exercise? Studies suggest that there are lower testosterone levels in men who exercise more than 5 hours a day compared to men who exercise in 1 to 2 hours a day. You might negatively impact your testosterone if you're at the gym for over 5 hours. It looks like the old saying is true: you can have too much of a good thing. That being said, the intensity of the exercise can have as much of an impact as the duration. An hour-long session of high-intensity interval training can have just a severe effect on your testosterone levels as an extended period of more mild exercise. If you're looking to increase your testosterone, a few exercises have been proven to help. Those include front squats, goblet squats, deadlifts, bench presses, push-ups, and hip thrusts. On top of talking to a doctor, if you want to increase your testosterone, a moderate exercise routine and plenty of sleep should help you. Some men with low testosterone are treated with hormone therapy, but did you know roosters are the ones who paved the way for hormone replacement therapy? In 1849, German physiologist and zoologist Arnold Berthold observed castrated roosters. He noted that they stopped fighting and crowing, and their comb stopped growing. He found their behavior changed when the testes were reconnected. This is considered the earliest form of testosterone replacement. Speaking of early hormone therapy testing, let's talk about the Société de Biologie in Paris, a learned society founded in 1848. Their members held regular meetings and would publish their findings in a new scientific journal. At a meeting in 1889, a physician named Charles-Édouard Brown-Séquard attended. He was known for being eccentric and controversial. First and foremost, we don't recommend following his example. At the conference, Brown-Séquard described an experiment he had performed on himself. He had mixed together blood, semen, water, and the testicular extracts from guinea pigs and dogs and injected the flute into his arms and legs. He did this 10 times over 3 weeks at the age of 72. Brown-Séquard claimed that he had rejuvenated his sexual prowess after injecting himself with his concoction. He also believed his limbs had regained their former strength. He noted his physical stamina increased. He had longer jets of urine, and he had noticed a change in his power of defecation. However, endocrinologist Robert G. Greenblatt explained that Brown-Séquard's therapy couldn't have possibly worked. Unlike the thyroid gland, the testes do not store the hormones they produce. In order to get a therapeutic dose of testosterone from testes, Greenblatt stated it would require about 1/4 ton of bull's testes. It's likely that the men who followed in Brown-Séquard's footsteps were simply experiencing the placebo effect. So if you think this is a quick fix, you'd be wrong. Old-time scientists and doctors seem to be a never-ending source of medical and scientific weirdness. After Brown-Séquard, scientists did try other techniques to get similar results. This led to scientists implanting chimpanzee testes in adult men and injecting testicular matter from goats, rams, and boars into their abdomens. Testosterone was first synthesized in 1935, and it was the beginning of modern androgen therapy. In Amsterdam, Ernest Lacker isolated testosterone from bull testes. Fun side note, Ernest Lacker is believed to have coined the term testosterone. Adolf Butenandt in Göttingen and Leopold Ruzicka in Basel were the first to chemically synthesize testosterone. They distilled it from 4,000 gallons of donated urine. Researchers discovered that when testosterone is given orally, it is inactivated by the liver. Did you know that being in love can lower your testosterone? According to an Italian study, it's true. Men in committed romantic relationships will have lower testosterone levels than single men. Conversely, the opposite is true for women. When women are in love, they have higher levels of testosterone. The testosterone found in married and unmarried men in relationships showed no difference. Speaking of love, testosterone can also make men more likely to compete over a woman. At Wayne State University, there was a study that men with higher testosterone were more likely to compete with men with less testosterone over an attractive woman. The precise effects remain unclear. There's also research on courting rituals in birds and mice and testosterone's effects on the subjects. Researchers found that when castrated birds were implanted with T crystals in specific brain areas, the male birds showed increased courtship behaviors. In rats, their courtship behavior was curbed by being castrated, but restored when the researchers treated them with an exogenous testosterone. The studies have led researchers to hypothesize that T levels rise during activities or challenges relevant to reproduction, preparing the male's body for an adaptive response. While this was initially only applied to birds, researchers have extended this research to humans. We also have a weird fact for all you fathers out there. The Royal Society of Biological Sciences in Britain found that men with children have fewer testosterone samples in their saliva than childless men. If you're involved in childcare, you're also more likely to have lower testosterone than men who don't spend much time caring for their children. However, men with higher testosterone at 21 were more likely to marry and have children within 5 years. Men's testosterone levels are at their highest in the mornings after they've had a good night's rest. According to urologist Dr. Faisal Yafi, it follows the circadian rhythm, which is why it's at its highest between 7 and 10 a.m. For men with lower testosterone, morning workouts can help boost their testosterone levels for some men. While women go through menopause, there's no such thing as male menopause. Women will experience a hormone plunge during menopause, but as men age, their testosterone levels will only fall very slowly and usually not as drastically. A CEO's actions are also heavily impacted by testosterone levels. It can affect how aggressively they pursue mergers and acquisitions and how quick they are to reject offers. Male CEOs younger than 45 were more likely than older men or women to initiate or end merger and acquisition deals. Researchers found that young male CEOs with high testosterone were also more likely to reject low offers, even if it went against their best interests. We've discussed some symptoms men can exhibit if their testosterone is too high, but they can also show signs of mania. John Coates is a former trader who became a student of neuroscience. If a man's testosterone levels become excessive, their brain is likely to go haywire. According to Coates, it's as if they're on drugs. Coates further explained, "During the dot-com bubble, people who were working with me displayed all the classic symptoms of mania. They were euphoric, delusional, and overconfident. They couldn't put a coherent sentence together, and they were usually horny, judging from the number of lewd comments and the amount of porn that was showing up on their computer screens." Now that we know all of that, it's no surprise that the more testosterone a man has, the more likely he is to pursue a career in finance. Researchers have tested over 500 Master of Business Administration or MBA students and found that their testosterone levels and risk aversion could accurately predict long-term career goals, since those with high testosterone were less likely to be risk-averse, and they were more likely to choose riskier careers in finance. We're sure you've heard the old wives' tale about oysters and your libido, but did you know oysters can help increase your testosterone levels? It's the zinc in the oysters that can help raise your testosterone, and they help maintain a healthy amount of dopamine. So is it any wonder they help you with your sex life? Oysters have heart-healthy omega-3 fats that help increase blood flow. That means that they can be used to help prevent issues like erectile dysfunction. Who knew such a slimy little snack could be so advantageous? Did you know high levels of testosterone can affect your facial morphology? A man's facial features can be a telltale sign of just how much testosterone he has. Men with more testosterone are likelier to have a wider jaw, thicker eyebrows, a shorter forehead, and a wider, shorter nose. Testosterone is often blamed for violent behavior, but it's not the main factor in violence in men. People often look to weightlifters who overdose on anabolic steroids experience what we'll call roid rage, according to Melvin Connor. According to researcher Melvin Connor, testosterone is more of an accomplice than a perpetrator. Castration experiments have proven that testosterone is necessary for violence, but it's not the driving factor. Some have asked, are men with high testosterone levels more likely to be violent, or does being violent raise a man's testosterone? For American men, whether you're from the North or South can impact how quickly your testosterone levels increase. At the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor, researchers conducted an experiment that separated men based on whether they were raised in the North or South. Men from the South were more likely to respond aggressively to insults, but their testosterone also rose. In contrast, Northerners were less likely to experience a testosterone increase. This research also supports the notion that testosterone increases when a man's body prepares to respond to competition or a challenge to his status. Any stimulus or event of this nature can trigger an increase in testosterone levels. We've talked about how testosterone is tied to antisocial behavior, but can it make you just downright mean? Like a lot of things we've mentioned, it's complicated. Charles Ryan has a clinic in San Francisco where he frequently treats prostate cancer. The prostate cancer treatment results in many of his patients having lower testosterone levels. Ryan has observed changes in his patients' behavior as their testosterone levels fall. Ryan did notice that some patients experienced fatigue and weight gain, but he's also seen the medical students who have passed through his clinic comment on how nice his patients are. Ryan jokingly replied, "It's because they don't have any testosterone. They can't be mean." Dr. Ryan was aware that his patients had not always been so kind. Even if the patients in question were good at conversing and engaging in small talk, they were rarely interested in other people. As their testosterone levels lowered, their capacity for empathy increased. Ryan believes there's a benefit to lowering men's testosterone levels. He said, "I think it's misguided for aging men to think they should necessarily want to have high testosterone levels, because they may pay a price for that in terms of their relationships. They may be more self-centered and lack empathy." Low testosterone can also be connected to head injuries. Weird, but true. Remember when we brought up the hypothalamus-pituitary axis earlier? Well, in this case, it's the pituitary gland that impacts testosterone levels. If the pituitary gland is injured, it can lead to low testosterone levels. Close to 80% of men who suffer from traumatic brain injuries or PTSD have reported suffering from low testosterone. We've mentioned that low T levels can cause you to have thinner bones. Low testosterone is the primary cause of osteoporosis in men. It's said that 1 in 5 men who have low T levels will experience an osteoporotic fracture in their lifetime. While it's much more common in women, men with low T levels or hypogonadism are much more likely to develop the condition. This can lead to injuries like hip fractures and vertebral fractures. Fortunately, men can improve their bone density by 30% if they receive testosterone replacement therapy. You can use a man's testosterone levels after he wins or loses to help predict if he'll compete again. Testosterone fluctuates throughout the day, and testosterone levels change after a win or a loss. Researchers observed that those changes help them predict what the loser of a competition would do next. If the loser had increased testosterone, he would likely compete again. He would be less likely to compete again if he had lower testosterone levels after losing. One study that followed this phenomenon was conducted at the University of Texas at Austin by psychology researchers Robert Josephs and Pranjal Mehta. They studied more than 60 men and had them compete against each other in pairs. They found that among the men who had lost, 70% of them with increased testosterone levels chose to compete again. Of the men whose testosterone decreased after losing, 80% decided not to compete again. This experiment only applies to the losers. When they measured testosterone in the winners, Josephs and Mehta didn't notice any significant difference between those who competed again and those who didn't. Testosterone pills don't help older men as much as advertising would lead you to believe. In a study of 230 men aged 60 to 80, researchers noted slight improvement after taking testosterone pills. They did notice a slight increase in muscle mass and a decrease in fat compared to subjects not taking the hormone. But they found that it did not boost overall health or quality of life. Rather than turn to testosterone, researchers say eating healthy food and engaging in a lot of physical activity is far more critical. By the end of the study, researchers noticed that nearly half of the subjects taking testosterone exhibited symptoms of metabolic syndrome. The difference in metabolic syndrome rates between those taking the placebo and the subjects taking testosterone was not considered to be statistically significant. The male body. What a wonder of engineering it is. It contains half the genetic information needed to reproduce and continue civilization. It can produce milk but has useless nipples, and it has the uncanny ability to get an erection at the absolute worst of times. Prepare to be fascinated. Number 50. Male fetuses actually get erections while they're in the womb. And while no one can be absolutely sure why it happens, some reports state it's just to keep the thing healthy. Number 49. Men also have a G-spot. You can find it by pressing on your prostate. For reference, that's about 2 inches from the entrance of your anus. Number 48. Men over 50 might start growing breasts. This is due to the anomalous hormone production that happens as we age. Number 47. It differs from man to man, but in general, a healthy guy will ejaculate 40 million sperm in one go. Still, a man could produce anything up to 200 million sperm each time. You heard that right. That's more people than live in most countries. Number 46. According to one study that was published in the U.S. National Institutes of Health, the member of an American male had an average size of 5.1 to 5.5 inches when fully erect. The study didn't mention how it got its volunteers stimulated in order to measure them at their fullest, but it did confirm the sizes were professionally measured, not self-reported, so there was no room for the men to lie. Number 45. Nationality doesn't impact the size of your member. The conclusion in one study consisted of over 15,000 men from across the world was that the average penis size was 5.17 inches. Genetic factors have a much bigger influence according to a paper by the Nature journal, but does size even matter? Number 44. Studies have shown that if it's a one-night thing, women on average like a larger phallus, with research showing that they prefer a penis around 6.3 inches in length and 4.8 inches around, which, as you know, is larger than the average. But did size correlate with pleasure? We also looked at anecdotal accounts from women, and as you'd expect, every woman had her unique take on the penis. The consensus was that there had to be a balance, not too long and not too short, with one woman saying, "He had these moves that compensated for his size. Small penises aren't bad at all, if the man knows how to use it." Okay, one last thing about your precious product down there. Number 43. We've all heard about growers versus showers, but is there any truth to it? A study by Healthline showed that 26% of men are growers, with the rest being showers. This is because of a person-to-person difference in how much collagen there is in the penis, which is genetic. The amount of collagen might mean you're a grower or a shower. The amount of blood flow may also make a difference. What's hilarious is that at the bottom of the article, Healthline explained how men can measure their penis, from the base of the shaft, of course, but they also gave this important bit of advice: just don't do it in public. Now, a special mention not to the penis, but to the bulge. Number 42. Throughout history, there's been a preference for a smaller penis, but in cultures, a big one was a sign of greater manhood. For example, in Norse mythology, there is a proud reference to a man whose bratwurst is almost as big as a horse's. Alright, now for some fast-fire facts. Number 41. Men typically have darker hair than women, with one reason being their higher levels of melanin. Number 40. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine said around 40% of men are chronic snorers, but only 24% of women habitually make that noise from hell. Number 39. You might have heard that if he has large feet, then his member will be large too, but this is just another myth in a long list of myths when it comes to the penis. Number 38. Semen is not just a load of sperm. According to one scientist's website, it also contains citric acid, free amino acids, fructose, enzymes, phosphorylcholine, prostaglandin, potassium, and zinc. Number 37. Men tend to have a faster metabolism. Due to the fact that they usually have more muscle than women, that means that even if they're just sitting around, they'll be burning more calories. But are men's and women's brains different? Number 36. If you say that men and women have different brains, you run the risk of being accused of neurosexism. We don't want that to happen to us, but we did read some scientific articles that told us that some parts of the brain might be different in the sexes. Some research says because of the different brain structures, men might be better on average at completing spatial and motor tasks. At the same time, though, women might be better at learning languages and expressing emotions. Remember, though, not all scientists agree on this. Number 35. On average, a man might have 3 to 5 erections every night while he's sleeping, and some of the erections might last as long as 30 minutes. This might have nothing to do with a wet dream or the fact that he's just cozied up closer to his lover. It's a natural phenomenon that scientists call nocturnal penile tumescence. We imagine some of you guys out there have on occasions woken up in the morning and felt something very stiff down there. Or perhaps your girlfriend has stood back in shock and said, "Oh dear, whatever could that be in your pajama pocket?" Morning wood is absolutely normal. The reason it happens down there is something called the parasympathetic nervous system. It can be stimulated at night since it doesn't switch off during sleep. But why it happens during the night is something science isn't so sure about. Number 34. If you don't get any stiffies throughout the night, there might be a problem. In fact, one study said 52% of grown men experience some kind of erectile dysfunction, with it happening more when men pass the age of 40. Still, a study published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine said 26% of men under 40 also experience erectile dysfunction. The main culprits are booze and drugs in the short term, but in the longer term, diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, obesity, depression, and anxiety can all affect the ability to make the man stand to attention and stay that way for a useful amount of time. Number 33. In a study titled Prevalence of Pubic Hair Grooming-Related Injuries, it was said that 25% of groomers reported an injury, but this study also included female groomers. How bad can the injury be? Number 32. The absolute worst thing we could find related to cutting and shaving injuries down there was something called Fournier gangrene. Simply put, if there really was hell in this world, then this disease would be Satan's proudest achievement. It's described as a necrotic infection of the scrotum or catastrophic gangrene of the penis, and in some cases, it's happened when someone has nicked their scrotum while grooming. Thankfully, it is very rare. Amen to that. Number 31. A gastroenterologist working at Princeton named Anish Sheth wrote an entire book on poo, from what colors mean to how solid they are. He also wrote about something he called poophoria, which is when a person has an orgasm while dropping the kids off at a pool. He said for some people it can be like having a religious experience due to it feeling so good. He said that this kind of stool high is related to the vagus nerve being stimulated, adding the stool high is relatively safe, but can become an addiction for some. Number 30. Did you know that men have thicker skin than women? They do, and it's because of testosterone. In fact, one study showed that on average, men had 10 to 20% thicker skin. This can also be good news to some vain men, because this is one reason why many healthy men don't age as fast as women. How you age, though, is obviously partly determined by your genes and, more importantly, all the environmental factors the skin experiences over the years. Alright, now we'll settle that argument between you and your partner, if you're in a male-female relationship, that is. Number 29. Have you ever been in a room with someone of the opposite sex and one of you is arguing that it's too warm or too cold, but you are wearing similar types of clothes? One reason for that is that men generally are warmer than women. One doctor explained it like this: since women have a lower metabolic rate, they tend to produce less heat than men do, which makes them feel colder. Sometimes the difference is quite startling, with one health website writing, "Some studies have shown that while men feel comfortable in rooms with a thermostat set to 72 degrees, women tend to feel comfortable in rooms with a thermostat set to 77. Now we'll ask the question, what on earth is that thing that some people call man flu? Number 28. According to an article in the British Medical Journey, some scientists believe that man flu is nothing but man whining. The paper said despite the universally high incident and prevalence of viral respiratory illness, no scientific review has examined whether the term man flu is appropriately defined or just an ingrained pejorative term with no scientific basis. It's a long paper, but the upshot was that a man's antibody response to the flu could be inferior to a woman's. The paper also highlighted the fact that more men end up in the hospital with the flu, and their bout of the sickness on average lasts longer. This is ongoing research, but there is a possibility that the man is not a wimp and might actually be experiencing a higher level of suffering. Now let's talk about man nips. Number 27. Men in theory can produce milk. That's because their bodies make the hormone oxytocin and prolactin, which are responsible for milk production. Men also have milk ducts, so milk can in theory come out. That means that given the right circumstances, a man could breastfeed. In fact, this is something recorded throughout history. Even the Greek philosopher named Aristotle said men could produce milk if they squeezed their breasts enough. Later in the 19th century, a book called Anomalies and Curiosities of Medicine talked about some real-life cases of men giving their own milk to babies. Although these cases are not verified, it could, as we say, happen in theory, but a man's hormone levels would have to be through the roof. Number 26. You might also not know that for a time, young males might have female-looking breasts. A researcher interviewed by the Scientific American said, actually, a significant number of boys around the age of puberty do develop breasts, so the tissue is there, but it regresses. It's a condition called gynecomastia and is related to a hormone imbalance. The good news is that things usually balance and the boy breasts go. That's not always the case though. A man named Merle Yost wrote a book about growing up with breasts where he recounted his years of bullying at school and his final jump to get breast reduction surgery at the age of 33. Number 25. In general, men have less body fat than women. It's thought the reason for women having more body fat is an evolutionary adaptation related to them being able to have children. Number 24. A paper published in the U.S. National Institutes of Health had this to say about male and female natural differences. The results showed that the male teeth were consistently larger than the female teeth. But why? Number 23. It's not always the case, but it's thought that it has something to do with men having more dentine in the crowns of their teeth. Dentine is one of the tissues that make up a tooth. The other parts are the enamel, cementum, and pulp. Now, let's try and settle that old age debate on pain thresholds. Do men feel more pain than women? Number 22. You might have heard this before, with people telling you that women have a higher threshold of pain due to the fact that she's evolved to go through childbirth. The thing is, though, pain is subjective, so it's still hard to measure. In studies where men and women have been subjected to the same pain stimuli, it seems men had a higher pain threshold. The study is actually more complicated as it does take into account that culturally men are expected to not express pain. Number 21. You might also have heard that men have fewer ribs than women. That is utter balderdash, although some people might not have the standard 12 pairs of ribs. Number 20. In some studies, it's written that women generally find men with high testosterone levels more attractive. The good news for all you single guys out there is that single men tend to have higher levels than men who are already with a partner. Number 19. A man's testosterone levels might go up and down within a day, but some men do have higher levels in general. There's also something called irritable male syndrome, which could account for men becoming grumpier in old age because their testosterone levels drop. But as you'll now see, men can get very old and still do the business in the bed. Number 18. There's no age limit for men being able to produce sperm and make a baby. In 2010, it was reported that a guy in India named Ramajit Raghav just had a kid. He was 94. He didn't give up either, having another child just 2 years later. When asked about his secret, he told the British media, "I've been a vegetarian all my life, and I credit my stamina and virility to the diet of vegetables and grains. Being a vegetarian is the secret to my strength and good health." He died in 2020, aged 104. Number 17. Still, the American Society for Reproductive Medicine says male sperm is of a higher quality while men are under the age of 40. In fact, sperm donors are usually asked to be under that age. Number 16. This is one reason why when there's an age gap in a male-to-female relationship, the older person is more often the man. Sure, there are lots of other things to take into account, such as the woman liking a settled-down man who's more likely to be faithful, have money, etc. But one simple fact is some men like younger women because a younger woman from an evolutionary perspective can still procreate. Number 15. Going bald might be some men's worst nightmare, but is it really that bad? Many studies have shown that women like bald men. Trust us, when it comes to being attractive, there are many things that come before your hair. Plus, if you're so insecure and lacking in confidence, well, she might think you're too vain or too weak. In one study, it showed 44% of women were attracted to bald men, but those women were aged 35 to 44. Just 19% of women aged 18 to 24 liked bald guys. Some studies have shown that some women perceive bald men as being more dominant, more masculine, and more successful. Number 14. Studies have shown half of all men will show some amount of male pattern baldness by the time they're 50. Usually it's down to genetics and is related to sex hormones called androgens. Number 13. As we said, this usually starts happening as a man matures, but there are some cases of teenagers going bald naturally. The Guardian talked to a guy named Sam Wolfson. He said he was 16 when his hair started thinning, and then by the time he was in his early 20s, he had only some wispy fuzz on top and 2 bushes at the sides. That's a bit sad, so let's talk about orgasms again. Number 12. The male orgasm is different from a woman's. Guys shoot their load and it seems after that someone has taken all the air out of them. They're like a sex doll that's just been burst. Women, though, have longer orgasms and they're often ready to go again right away. Teen males tend to have more forceful ejaculations, so it's in these years when a guy might fire someplace where he never thought he could reach. What usually comes out is 2 to 5 cubic centimeters of sperm. That's enough to fill a teaspoon at 5 cc's. As for how much in one sitting, it depends on many things such as genetics, mood, prior absence from ejaculating, lifestyle, and general health. In terms of how many rounds men can go, young folks could possibly squeeze out 5 sessions, but older people would likely not go that far. Number 11. With the male orgasm, there's something often called the point of no return. This is called ejaculatory inevitability, and it means the semen's already started making its way to the urethra and is about to experience liftoff. At this point, there will be a series of contractions of the penile muscles in the location of the base of the anus. The pelvis might also start the thrust. Those nerves that have caused the contraction send messages to the brain and everything feels good. Number 10. Before all that happens, a man will need to be aroused. Messages are sent from his spinal cord, and this makes his member stiffen. During this period, he might also let out some liquid from his urethra. This is called pre-ejaculatory fluid, and it's there to affect the pH balance in the urethra. This helps the survival of the sperm to come, but it doesn't contain sperm itself. Once the job is done, the male goes through what scientists call a refractory period. It's basically downtime before he's ready to go again. In a young man, it could be just 10 minutes, but in an older guy, it'll usually be hours. Number 9. Your sperm needs your semen, remember the whole bundle, to get to the egg. Without the rest of the ingredients, it wouldn't get very far at all. But if sperm does take off, it can live inside the woman for up to around 5 days. If it lands somewhere it isn't intended, well, it can only live for a few minutes. Number 8. If you're wondering if you could take a look at sperm, you can't. It's about 1/500th of an inch long, which is around 10,000 times smaller than the egg it wants to meet. Under a microscope, the sperm meeting the egg looks like a tiny spacecraft landing on a vast planet. Number 7. When a woman is ovulating, men can actually pick up on that just by smelling her. Ovulation is when a woman's egg is matured and so has been sent off by the ovary and down the fallopian tubes, where it can wait for one of those lucky sperms to make contact. Number 6. Okay, so what would you think if you read this start to the research paper? Individuals in some species prefer mates carrying dissimilar genes at the major histocompatibility complex, MHC, which may function to increase the MHC or overall heterozygosity of progeny. Yep, that's a bit of a mouthful. What the paper is saying is that women can detect dissimilar genes in men, so by choosing them, their offspring might be healthier. We bet you never thought about that as you moved your stool in the pub closer to a woman. But it gets even more complex. Number 5. Talking to CNN, a scientist said that the egg itself might be able to attract the right kind of sperm. He said human eggs release chemicals called chemoattractants, which leave a sort of chemical breadcrumb trail that sperm use to find unfertilized eggs. Now let's move away from sperm. Number 4. Did you know that guys in general see fewer shades of color? We'll let a scientist explain why. She said this is because retinal cones are on the X chromosome, which men only have one of. Men, however, have more testosterone in their visual cortexes, meaning they sense brightness better than women. Number 3. Something you probably thought we would have talked about already is the male nipple. What's the point of it? The reason men have nipples is that when the embryo is forming, males and females are pretty much the same. They share the same blueprint, which is the reason all humans look alike in terms of basic structure. But after around 7 weeks of gestation, the gene of the Y chromosome makes some changes and the testes start to form. It's then that little bundle of blood starts producing testosterone. But that doesn't mean the nipples have to go. What would be the point in losing them? They aren't doing anyone any harm. Number 2. Another thing men might not need is that thing we call foreskin. After all, in some cultures they get rid of it. Is that the right thing to do? In a paper called Vital or Vestigial, the foreskin has its fans and foes. The writer cites some scientists who have called the foreskin the floppy disk of the male anatomy, meaning it is no longer needed. If you think about it, men have very long time ago might have wanted to walk around with the penis hanging out, and that can mean some damage being caused to this Jonah Hill. This is really bad news in evolutionary terms because the only real reason we're here is to make other people, so the foreskin acted as a protective shield. It could also act as a lubricant back then and now. Number 1. This is personal. When the writer was a kid, he kept hearing boys talk about their balls dropping, as if one day those things just went plop and fell down. It never happened, but his balls looked fine as they were. Still, he was concerned. For many kids waiting for their balls to drop, it can be quite worrying if nothing seems to be happening. Actually, there is no sudden drop at all when the child is already grown. Balls don't really drop. They're tight to the body for sure when men are younger, and then when a boy matures and he produces more testosterone, his balls get larger, and it might seem like they're lower at that point. Take everything you know about semen and throw it out the window, because you were lied to. Yes, it comes out of the penis during ejaculation, but beyond that, you're probably filled with misconceptions. Just like semen is filled with much more than just sperm. If you really want to learn all the weird facts about semen and be smarter than your friends, you need to watch this video. There is most definitely sperm in semen, but not as much as you might think. Also, this is where we'll break one of the most common misconceptions. Semen and sperm are not the same thing. Sperm is the male sex cell that's produced in the testes and carries half of the DNA to make a baby. Semen, on the other hand, is a mixture of lots of different proteins, lipids, fluids, and sperm. With each fact about this mysterious substance, things are going to get weirder and weirder. One of the most common questions about semen has to do with what's called pre-ejaculate or pre-cum. Is the liquid that comes out of the penis before ejaculation semen? And whatever it is, can it get a female pregnant? We have the answers, but first we need to understand what semen actually consists of. Most of the semen isn't created in the testicles. Instead, the substance is made in 3 different areas of the body and are mixed together just as a man ejaculates. During orgasm, the sperm travels through the seminal vesicles, where a yellowish fluid rich in fructose is produced and mixed in with the sperm. This is what around 70% of the semen is actually made of. After the seminal vesicles, the concoction passes through the prostate, where a fluid containing enzymes, citric acid, phosphates, and lipids is added. Lastly, just before ejaculation, the fluid goes through the bulbourethral glands, which secretes lubrication to allow the sperm to pass out of the urethra. Who knew the journey of semen was full of so many twists and turns? When the semen comes out of the penis, it is almost entirely made up of proteins and water. Only 1 to 5% of the semen is actually sperm. Granted, in the average teaspoon-sized ejaculation of semen, there are around 200 to 500 million sperm cells. However, the vast majority of the substance is not sperm. You may be asking yourself, why do men create so much other stuff while ejaculating? The answer is pretty crazy, and it has to do with how hostile the vagina is. For sperm, the female reproductive system is a difficult and treacherous path to navigate. In order for the sperm to even stand the slightest chance of reaching an egg, it needs to be contained within the protective liquids of semen. The vagina itself is too acidic for sperm to survive in. Also, the female's immune cells patrol the reproductive system, and they will identify and destroy sperm on sight if it's not contained within semen. The contents of seminal fluid, which is just a fancy way of saying semen, creates a safe barrier between the sperm and everything that wants to kill it in the female's body. So we're now back to the question, what is pre-ejaculate and can it get a female pregnant? It's not actually semen at all. Instead, the pre-ejaculate is secreted by the Cowper's gland, which is not used in the production of semen or sperm. It is thought that this liquid is used to help lubricate the tip of the penis to allow for easier penetration during sex. Therefore, pre-ejaculate cannot get a female pregnant. That being said, if a male has recently ejaculated and some sperm was able to survive in the urethra, the pre-ejaculate could flush some of that sperm into the vagina if a couple goes for round 2 immediately after climax was achieved by the male. To be extra careful and make sure that the lubricant doesn't contain any sperm, flush the system by peeing before going at it again, or use a condom, or get a vasectomy. Any of those things are viable options. Now that we're all on the same page about semen, let's get into some even more bizarre facts about the ejaculate. Semen doesn't just protect the sperm from the female's body, but from the body it came from as well. The testicles are considered an immunologically privileged site. This means they are protected from the body's own immune system, so the sperm inside of them is not destroyed. Since the male doesn't produce sperm until after puberty, the already developed immune system doesn't recognize sperm cells as part of its own body. Therefore, once the sperm leaves the safety of the testicles, the immune cells can immediately try to destroy them. The semen that the sperm is contained in protects the cells and allows them to quickly move out of the male's body during ejaculation before they're destroyed. And if that isn't crazy enough, think about what semen allows sperm to do once it leaves the body. Sperm is the only human cell that is produced in one person but meant to survive inside another. This is how people get pregnant. Without the semen, sperm would not be able to survive long enough inside a female body to complete their mission. The sperm are explorers, and the semen is their spaceship to travel to the final frontier. One of the most surprising things about semen actually has to do with surgery. Men get vasectomies for different reasons. Maybe they aren't ready for children and want to have sex with less risk of getting their partner pregnant. Regardless of the reasoning, a vasectomy operation is done by separating the tubes called the vas deferens that transport sperm from the testes to the urethra. By snipping this tube, sperm is not able to leave the male body. However, that's not the case for the man's semen. When you think of a vasectomy, you might assume that the male will no longer ejaculate at all. But this is not true. Males who undergo this operation still ejaculate about the same amount of semen as before. There just isn't any sperm in it. The only part that's missing in the semen from a man with a vasectomy is the 1 to 5% of the sperm that normally mixes with the other fluids. Something else to note is that a vasectomy will not prevent the spread of STDs, which are still transferred in the fluids swapped during sex, whether it be vaginal, anal, or oral. For men who still have their vas deferens attached to the rest of the reproductive system, there's another weird fact about the sperm mixed with their semen. Only about half the sperm are functional. So really, when a man ejaculates, the amount of healthy sperm in the semen is closer to 1%. The sperm that are not viable tend to be misshapen. They can have 2 heads or 2 tails. The sperm can be too big or too small. Really, it's a miracle that males can get the job done at all sometimes. And sticking with the testicles, do you need 2 in order to produce enough semen for pregnancy? The answer is 1 testicle will do just fine. Even if a male only has 1 testicle, he can still produce enough sperm and semen to impregnate a female. Interestingly, if a man loses a testicle, sometimes the remaining one will grow slightly to produce more sperm. Even if the mixture of sperm and the semen is cut in half, there are still hundreds of millions of sperm in the fluid, which is definitely enough to cause pregnancy. It just means that the couple may need to have more sex, which could be good news to hear. Our last fact about semen is that the size of the load does not correlate to fertility. A large ejaculation with lots of semen or a smaller one contain about the same amount of sperm. It's only the amount of liquids or other parts of the semen that increases. The average ejaculation amount is around a teaspoon of semen. Whether a man's ejaculation is more than that or slightly less, it will still contain hundreds of millions of sperm. So, in terms of the amount of semen in an ejaculation, size doesn't matter. They say the best way to a man's heart is through his stomach. But that's a common misconception. In reality, the best way to his heart is actually through the 5th intercostal space, out of the left midclavicular line. And there's a lot more that most people don't understand about men. A lot of questions that tend to go unanswered. Like, why do guys get random erections? Why does cold cause, shrinkage? What causes male pattern baldness? Thankfully, these mysteries don't have to remain unsolved. Today, we're diving into some of the weirdest facts about men. To kick things off, let's talk about erections. 50% of the population has them, and humanity wouldn't be able to multiply without them. So let's remove that stigma and open up the conversation. Millions of men all around the world have dealt with the stress and embarrassment of random, unanticipated erections. So what causes them? Ghosts? A trickster god? The cursed coin you stole from that old lady? Nope, nothing like that. It's completely normal and natural. Erections are normally caused by sexual arousal, which in turn increases blood flow to the penis, allowing it to rise to the occasion, so to speak. But sometimes erections occur without the presence of sexual arousal. One potential cause is hormone fluctuations, specifically the fluctuation of testosterone levels. Testosterone levels naturally fluctuate throughout the day and can be influenced by stress, diet, exercise, sleep, and aging. As these testosterone levels shift, they can sometimes trigger unexpected or unwanted erections. There are also medications that can cause random erections as a side effect, including antidepressants, blood pressure medications, and some antihistamines. Yes, treating your allergies can result in random erections. If this happens, it's important to discuss it with your doctor and find a way to adjust your treatment. One of the most common types of random erections occurs first thing in the morning. Nocturnal penile tumescence, or morning wood, as it's been nicknamed, is caused when the penis fills with blood and you wake up with an erection. These can sometimes be brought on by dreams of the more erotic variety, but more often than not, they're caused by something more physiological. The parasympathetic nervous system is the part of the nervous system responsible for digestion, urination, and sexual arousal. When this system is active, it can cause an erection. This part of your brain becomes really active when you sleep, especially during the REM or rapid eye movement stage. This is also the sleep stage at which dreams occur. Most people wake up after or during REM sleep, meaning the odds of waking up with an erection are relatively high. These dreams don't have to be sexual, they can be about anything. Even that dream where you're falling off a cliff, or running from one of those giant inflatable guys they put outside of used car lots. Oh, is that just me? Nocturnal penile tumescence can also be triggered by sleeping with a full bladder. Some experts theorize that a full bladder puts pressure on the sacral nerve, triggering a parasympathetic nervous system response and resulting in an erection. Whatever the cause, morning wood is completely normal and can last anywhere from a few minutes to 35 minutes. Sometimes the same factors that lead to nocturnal penile tumescence can cause nocturnal emissions or wet dreams. In these cases, ejaculation occurs while the person is still sleeping. This can be the result of a sex dream, but can also just be set off by stressful dreams and REM sleep, activating our good old friend, the sympathetic nervous system again, causing the involuntary reaction. Sometimes the problem isn't poorly timed erections, but a lack of erections when you really need one, but we'll get to that one a bit later. First, let's move away from the penis for a moment and talk about the breasts. Male breasts specifically. Did you know that men can produce breast milk? This might sound like a fake fact that we made up, but it's true. Any man can lactate under the right conditions. Jack Newman, a Toronto-based doctor and breastfeeding expert, spoke with Scientific American about the possibilities of male lactation. Any changes in the production of prolactin, the hormone that causes milk production, can lead to spontaneous lactation, even in someone who has not given birth. For example, Thorazine, an antipsychotic used in the mid-20th century, caused the pituitary gland to overproduce prolactin. This could then induce lactation. Lactation is also a potential side effect of digoxin, a heart medication. A tumor in the pituitary gland could also increase prolactin levels and cause the same issue. It's also been pointed out that prolactin can be released in the body simply through nipple stimulation. Most men's breasts may look different from most women's, but under the right conditions, both are capable of producing milk. On the topic of facts that sound like we made them up, did you know it might be possible for someone to smell if you're single? A study at Australia's Macquarie University found that heterosexual women assessing the body odor of random men consistently rated single men as having stronger body odor than those in relationships. Though the exact cause of this could not be determined, there were some theories. Mainly, it's been found that single men have higher testosterone levels on average than men in relationships, and testosterone levels are correlated with stronger body odor. Of course, this might just be due to the fact that older men are more likely to have partners, and testosterone levels decrease with age. There will need to be more research on the matter to determine for sure if someone can actually smell your singlehood on you. Now for some slightly less fun but still important facts. On average, men have a shorter life expectancy than women, and one of the factors that contributes to that is a higher risk of heart disease. The leading cause of death for men is heart disease, and men are statistically diagnosed with heart disease when they're 10 years younger compared to their female counterparts. So men, please look after your hearts, and not just romantically. Okay, now we can get back to talking about penises. Approximately 30 million men in the United States are affected by erectile dysfunction. Erectile dysfunction, also called ED or impotence, is a condition wherein a man has difficulty getting or maintaining an erection. ED can be caused by physical or mental factors, and the physical side of this is thought to be broken down into three major causes. The first is a lack of blood flow to the penis, caused by issues such as heart disease, smoking, or high blood sugar levels. The second is difficulty storing blood in the penis during an erection, also known as venous leak or cavernosal dysfunction. The third cause is the inability for the nerve signals from the brain to reach the penis, which can be caused by injuries, surgeries in the area, or illness. Psychological factors such as stress and anxiety can also contribute to ED. Luckily, it can be treated in a variety of ways, from lifestyle changes to medications. But we didn't always understand what caused ED or how to best treat it. In their desperation to cure erectile dysfunction, men throughout history have resorted to some pretty bizarre remedies in an attempt to reinvigorate their sex lives. Ancient Egyptians would rub a mix of baby crocodile hearts and wood oil onto a chronically flaccid penis. The Romans went for the oral approach. No, not like that, get your mind out of the gutter. They would consume the genitalia of animals known for high sex drives, such as rabbits. 13th century German friar Albertus Magnus also swore by this cure, advising men struggling with impotence to roast a wolf penis in an oven, then chew on a small portion of it. No advice on how to get a wolf penis without getting mauled to death, though. Albertus also suggested eating starfish to aid with the issue, though that could lead to the patient ejaculating blood. Maybe some treatments are just not worth trying. The practice of eating animal parts to cure erectile dysfunction persists to this day, with black markets providing illegally acquired tiger penis to alleviate ED symptoms, a cure from ancient Chinese medicine. Needless to say, it does not actually work, and it means that the struggle to get sufficient erections has actually indirectly contributed to the tiger's status as an endangered species. If you thought starfish came with nasty side effects, wait until you hear about the miracle cure of the late 1890s. Radium suppositories. Yes, radium as in the radioactive substance, and yes, suppositories as they went exactly where you'd expect. Or if that was a bit too much, there was also the option to insert radioactive wax rods into your urethra. For another horrible cure, but one that wasn't nearly as likely to cause cancer, there were testicle transplants like the one performed by Dr. Sergei Voronov in 1913. He transplanted pieces of tissue from a baboon's testicles into a 74-year-old man. An American Dr. John Brinkley took that idea and, up until 1939, was castrating goats and sewing their testicles into his patients' scrotums to also solve ED issues. Another inadvisable natural cure for erectile dysfunction is the bite of the Brazilian wandering spider. The erection caused by that bite is much more pain than pleasure, however, as it induces an agonizing 4-hour erection followed by death. Speaking of 4-hour erections, have you ever heard that number thrown around? Maybe as a disclaimer in the ads for erectile dysfunction medications like Viagra? There's a reason for that. Prolonged, unwanted erections, such as the kind that can be caused by an adverse reaction to Viagra or the bite of the Brazilian wandering spider, are called priapism. Some types of priapism are not cause for concern, but ischemic priapism, which results from blood being unable to exit the penis, can cause permanent damage to the penis if not properly treated. This is usually accomplished via a small needle and a syringe, which removes the excess blood from the area. But let's not dwell on that mental image for too long. Just as the penis can become too engorged, it can also shrink down in a way that causes distress and discomfort. Many guys who've climbed out of a cold swimming pool have experienced shrinkage, a phenomenon that occurs when the penis shrinks in size after exposure to cold temperatures. Director of Sexual Health and Medicine at Weill Cornell Medicine, Darius Paduk, said that exposure to the cold causes the blood vessels to constrict, limiting blood flow to the penis and causing it to decrease in size. It's a frustrating occurrence, but there are actually evolutionary benefits to it. The human body has evolved over time to preserve heat and energy. When it's exposed to extreme cold, it focuses all of its resources on keeping the blood flowing to the vital organs in the middle of the body. In order to do that, blood flow to less necessary appendages has to be reduced. This includes the fingers, the toes, and yes, in spite of how necessary of an appendage you might find it to be, the penis. The testicles also retract toward the rest of the body for a similar reason, so they can stay warm. A study from King's College London revealed that 30% of men are insecure about the size of their penis, and it's certainly a subject that gets a lot of attention. Amidst conversation about size in general, there's a frequent cultural discussion of the difference between a grower and a shower. As the names imply, a penis that is a shower does not change much in size from flaccid to erect, whereas a grower may appear smaller when flaccid, but becomes dramatically larger when erect. But is that actually a thing? In short, yes, but not for everyone. In March of 2023, a study was presented at the European Association of Urology Congress in Milan that determined a scientific definition for both growers and showers. If a person's penis size increased by more than 56% from flaccid to erect, they could be considered a grower, while the penis that increased by less than 36% qualified as a shower. Most male participants in the study did not fall into either category, neither growers nor showers. No correlation could be found between those qualities and age, weight, or smoking status. The study also determined that subjects who qualified as showers tended to have longer, flaccid penises on average than growers. In grower penises, the tunica albuginea, spongy erectile tissue in the penis, became thinner during erection than the shower penises. This is likely due to the presence of more elasticity in these tissues in penises that require it to stretch further and account for the growth. So essentially, growers and showers do exist, but are not neat categories that all men fall into. Another sexual frustration that tends to plague men is the sense of exhaustion and sleepiness that sets in immediately after orgasm. What is it about the orgasm that just hits the snooze button in the male body? Well, prolactin is once again playing a significant role in things, though there's no milk involved this time. Prolactin's released during orgasm, and prolactin just so happens to suppress dopamine, a neurotransmitter that makes you feel more awake. Oxytocin is also released during sex, lowering stress and making it easier to relax and drift off to sleep afterward. Combine that with the fact that people tend to have sex later in the day, which causes the hormone melatonin to release and kickstart the sleep cycle. And you have a cocktail of chemicals signaling it's bedtime and not in a sexual way. If men manage to not fall asleep after sex, they may find themselves frustrated by the refractory period. The refractory period is the scientific term for the time following ejaculation when a man is no longer able to get an erection. This is caused by the dopamine and testosterone levels in the body dropping, as well as, yet again, the rise in prolactin. These factors contribute to relaxation and the inability to achieve an erection immediately following orgasm. The duration of this period varies wildly from person to person. Some men only need half an hour or even less, others need hours or sometimes the entire day. This can depend on age, arousal levels, hormones, and general physical health. As odd, confusing, and frustrating as the human body can be sometimes, it's important to remember that we are not alone in experiencing all of the bizarre, gross, amazing things that make us human. How do you actually get one, or keep one? Or, for that matter, make one go away quickly? And generally, how big is one supposed to be? Can they hurt you? Or even kill you? We recently came across a highly disturbing headline in British news media that read, "Married man dies from his own erection." Gee whiz, we thought, that's really not good, especially if you're at that stage in life when you can consider yourself a veritable champion of the chubby, a prince of the pocket rocket. But was this killer erection a true story, or was it misinformation, or maybe a little bit of media exaggeration? We'll get to the weird and wacky stuff like that later, but first you need to know some hard facts about the bulging bratwurst. Not all erections are alike. They come in different shapes and sizes, and each has its own peculiar habits. But we all have them for the same reason, which is related to sexual pleasure and procreation. Even so, male fetuses can have erections in the womb. It's also not uncommon for infants and young children. This certainly doesn't mean the kid is having sexual thoughts, it's just an accident of biology, completely normal, although in very, very rare cases, if the boner stays, he might have what's called a prolonged penile erection. We'll talk about that later. For now, just know that for any male child, well before he even realizes what an erection actually means, the process is totally natural. It doesn't mean he's a freak or overly sexual or any different from any other kid. Just about all babies and children get the occasional accidental boner. Males can reach puberty anywhere from the age of 9 to 14, although for many males it's somewhere between 10 and 12 that things start to change. Between 15 and 17, his puberty phase will come to completion. Welcome to the early stages of manhood. When a boy's puberty hormones kick in, the testicles usually get bigger, hairs spurt around their genitals and under their arms, and importantly for this show at least, erections become more frequent. These erections also start getting paid for their hard construction work, meaning they start to receive and eject semen. You might not know it, but your semen is impressive stuff. Each package of semen contains all manner of treats. It's a 5 to 25 calorie goodie bag of vitamin C and B12. It contains calcium, citric acid, fat, fructose, lactic acid, magnesium, potassium, sodium, zinc, and all manner of proteins. Within water, mucus, and plasma, all those nutrients act to keep the spermatozoa alive. Spermatozoa are the life-giving property contained inside the semen. With each ejaculation, around 200 to 300 million of them might waste away on some tissue or a sock after 15 to 30 minutes in the external world. Or in the act of making love, they will try to survive the trip inside a woman's reproductive system. In what is literally an adventure of a lifetime, a single sperm might reach a woman's egg as soon as 30 to 45 minutes after takeoff. But it might also take hours. Sperm can actually live inside a woman for up to 5 days and still have the ability to fertilize an egg. If not released into the wild, the sperm can stay alive in a male body for 74 days. After this period of time, the sperm will die and be reabsorbed by his body. Once a boy has been through puberty, he's a sperm-making machine, an absolute warrior of productivity. He'll produce millions and millions of sperm cells every single day, each of them tiny, measuring about 0.002 inches. That's small, but the full semen package can be substantial. It can taste substantial too, coming off as bitter and salty, but it can also be sweet or metallic tasting according to those that have dined on this delicacy. In interviews, one woman said it hardly tastes of anything, if not a bit salty, while Michelle, 24, said, "It's a tolerable taste, but not something you'd choose to snack on if it were an actual food item. But Michelle, just think of all those wholesome nutrients." We're joking. You'd actually have to consume gallons of the stuff to get any dietary health benefits, and the fact that men produce 1.25 to 5 milliliters of semen per time on average, gallons would be hard to come by. Excuse the pun. Okay, so how does your body keep making this endless stream of sperm, which, by the way, will add up to about 7.5 liters for the average male life? The process of making sperm involves something called seminiferous tubules. These are home to germ cells that hormones such as testosterone turn into good old sperm. These germ cells grow up to become little tadpole things which are able to travel up another tube called the epididymis. They spend about 5 weeks in this tube and then move on to something called the vas deferens. This is an ongoing process until you die, unless there's something physiologically wrong with you. Still, you produce less sperm in older age. It takes about 2.5 months to turn a germ cell into a sperm cell that's mature enough to make the journey to the egg and create a new human. You can't turn this process off. You have a lifetime supply, even if you masturbate 80 times a day. Apparently, a guy from Argentina won some kind of record and did it 83 times in 24 hours. But even he would have had something left on round 84. Even so, a study from 2016 found that when 3 males held off masturbating for several days and then ejaculated 4 times with 2-hour breaks in between, they produced fewer sperm each time. Another study found that when men were habitual masturbators, while their sperm count dropped, the quality of the sperm wasn't affected at all. Even if you never ejaculate at all, your body will just reabsorb the sperm you produce, and the process keeps turning over. So-called fabstinence won't harm you at all, but it may make you feel horny or expedite a wet dream, aka nocturnal emission. There are people that believe abstinence from masturbation provides them with mental health benefits and higher levels of energy. Maybe they do feel that, but there's no science as yet to prove it. Moving on, young men tend to get hung up about ejaculating too quickly when they finally get it on with the person of their dreams. We've all been there. Well, most men have. This is called premature ejaculation, which can be a problem for some men and their partners. 30% of the male population in the whole world experiences regular premature ejaculation. You're not alone. Finishing too fast or not being able to start, which can produce what's called sexual performance anxiety, will at one point or another be a factor in just about every male's life. Thank God then for the squeeze method. This is when you squeeze your penis to stop yourself from ejaculating. You need to squeeze something called your frenulum, which is the part of the penis where the head meets the shaft. Just a bit of light pressure with your thumb and forefinger can stop you from finishing when you don't want to finish. You could always just let it go. Young men are usually easily capable of 2 to 3 orgasms a night. They also have a short refractory period compared to older men, meaning they don't need to wait so long to start the next round. According to research, the average intravaginal ejaculation latency time, meaning the average time it takes a man to ejaculate once he's entered the vagina of a woman, is 6.5 minutes. But only for guys aged 18 to 30. More recent research said 5.4 minutes is the average time for men of all ages. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, aka the DSM, describes premature ejaculation as a persistent or recurrent pattern of ejaculation occurring during partnered sexual activity with approximately 1 minute following vaginal penetration and before the person wishes it. Back in 1948, Alfred Kinsey's research found that 3/4 of American men ejaculated within the first 2 minutes of penetration. This was for heterosexual men, but we looked at forums where homosexual men talked about it, and a lot of respondents said around 5 minutes, sometimes less, sometimes more. As for what women want, a recent poll showed that the average time women want to be enjoined in coitus was 25 minutes. But the poll didn't specify if foreplay was involved. We imagine it'd be pretty normal for a woman to feel rather upset if the entire routine was over in just a few minutes. Whatever women want, they're not likely going to get the Hollywood montage lovemaking scene every time they go to bed with a guy. It's just not a reality for most people. 5 minutes is a job well done for most of the world. Okay, so what actually makes boners possible in the biological sense? The Roman-Greek physician and philosopher Galen, who took medicine and medical research to another level in antiquity, thought long and hard about the stiffy. That's not exactly how the medical books put it, but Galen did spend a fair bit of his time musing about the inflation of the male appendage. The Roman elite would go to him seeking advice on why their John Thomas was no longer standing at attention, hoping Galen could give them some ancient form of Viagra. He told them to anoint it with honey before sex, or put arugula seed in honey and drink it. If that didn't work, he told those desperate men, "Whenever the bull urinates after sex, mix the soil and the mud made by the urine into a plaster and anoint it on the penis." Galen was smart, but he didn't have a clue about how the male phallus became hard. He believed it was a matter of air being pumped into the penis, but he was well off the mark. Then Leonardo da Vinci came along in the 15th century and blew up the world of science. Was there anything da Vinci couldn't do? He wasn't just a talented painter, he was also an ingenious scientist, including a notable egghead where human anatomy was concerned. He drew a lot of pictures of the penis, and he understood that the penis became hard because of blood, not air. He came to this conclusion after dissecting the cadavers of men that had been hanged. When such an execution occurs, the male member does indeed become erect, and as Da Vinci found out, it was because it was filled with blood. This is because a part of the noose creates pressure on the part of the brain called the cerebellum, and this excites the nerves. The dead men can stay hard because in death, blood pools where gravity wants it to pool. In fact, many types of swift and sudden death can lead to an erection. Men can also ejaculate, pee, or poop when they no longer have control of their body. The 18th century Swiss anatomist and physiologist Albrecht von Haller took things a little further. He said the nervous system rules the penis. The penis does not have a mind of its own, as many men and women have said at some point in their life. But the brain does indeed cause the penis to inflate. Von Haller, the so-called father of physiology, knew that it was the nervous system that was responsible for the bulge in a man's pantaloons. Sexually aroused either by touch, sight, or thought, the autonomic nervous system kicks into action. This is the part of the nervous system that makes things happen without your conscious input, such as controlling how fast you're breathing, or when you need to pee, or indeed when you become erect. You can't control that. As much as a 16-year-old boy would love to make that erection go away in gym class when he sees the person he adores running around, it's not something he has much choice about. He can be aroused by touch, of course, but in this case, thought does the job. His brain creates hormones that send a cascade of blood into a spongy tube-like structure inside the penis known as the corpus cavernosum. And the penis fills up. It's just like filling up a rubber glove with water. Pour just a little bit of water in and you can have a pretty soft and limp glove finger. But pour a lot and it gets really stiff. The more you're aroused, the more blood gets pumped. High testosterone levels, which you have during puberty, make the blood pump harder. It also happens in the morning, known colloquially as morning wood. The technical term is nocturnal penile tumescence. Scientists say this is all about hormonal testosterone changes when you sleep. It might also be the fact that the sacral nerve is pressed when your bladder is full. Teens and young adults get them more than older guys. When you get hard, blood is redirected from another part of your body toward your penis. For those of you with very large penises, a doctor explained in an interview, you almost never find a penis so large that a man would pass out when erect. On average, an erection takes about 130 milliliters of blood. That's just a bit less than your standard glass of red wine in a restaurant. So, if you ever find yourself getting an erection across the dinner table from someone, just imagine all that wine flowing into your penis. Given that the human body carries around 1.2 to 1.5 gallons of blood, you easily have enough to redirect to your penis when nature comes a-calling. This brings us to another matter. As we said, some people, especially younger guys, don't always welcome their erections when they come at the wrong time. You might have heard you can meditate or take a cold shower to get rid of your erection, but let's face it, that wouldn't work in a class or in the backseat of a car. Sure, you can focus on the recently deceased dog that you loved so much, or perhaps imagine talking to your grandmother. That's the psychological way of escaping your embarrassing erection. Tried and tested by boys and men for millennia, but it doesn't always work. A doctor in Britain also said you could try flexing a muscle, especially a big one, such as your thigh muscle, as this would redirect blood away from your corpus cavernosum. You also have a tube on each side of the penis, so it's really the corpora cavernosa. The NHS in Britain said to try jogging to get rid of the erection, which again is useless advice to a guy at a pool party or on a first date. We know what an ill-timed or undesirable boner feels like. Surplus libido can be challenging, so better advice would be to do the squeeze method again. Not try to stop ejaculation, but this time to bring on softness, aka detumescence. A 10 to 20 second squeeze should work. This isn't about interrupting blood flow, but making something called the bulbospongiosus muscle contract. This muscle plays a major role in erections and ejaculation. Some of you will be familiar with the difficulty of achieving an erection while drunk. This is called alcohol-induced erectile dysfunction. The same might happen with medications because these substances are what are called central nervous system depressants. Booze interrupts those messages being sent to your brain from your nerves. When drunk, arousal is harder, despite what you might tell yourself. Also, because alcohol makes you urinate a lot, your total blood volume will be reduced, and as you know, you need that blood to fill your tubes. There's also the fact that alcohol can make you dehydrated. This can lead to a hormone called angiotensin being released, which in turn causes vasoconstriction, a narrowing of your blood vessels. You might be able to get hard, but it might not stay hard if there's vasoconstriction going on. Another thing young men and some older men for that matter get hung up on is penis size. Some guys are obsessed with this, which is actually quite a modern phenomenon. The ancient Greeks and Romans used to think small penises were admirable. They said large pieces of junk were for ogres. These days, men will pay good money to try to make their penis look like something the Greeks and Romans considered backward and vulgar. You'll never see an ancient European statue with a 10-inch schlong, that's for sure. Not unless that statue is supposed to depict something ogre-like. It's only us modern folks that put a lot of emphasis on the size of the penis, but the vast majority of women will tell you it's what you do with it that counts, and of course how they feel about the owner. Research shows just 69% of women have an orgasm when they have sex, compared to 95% of men. Research also shows that women have a higher chance of orgasming with someone they're in a relationship with. Penis size is rarely a factor, since it doesn't really affect clitoris stimulation. The clitoris, a super-sensitive erogenous zone that can bring on an almost instant ecstasy, is the little hooded button of sorts above the vaginal opening and the urethra. You don't need an outsized schlong to stimulate it. In other words, it's no use having a $12,000 Pinarello carbon road bike if you can barely even cycle to the local convenience store without getting tired. Actually, that happens all the time, and some men might think their large phallus is enough for women, but it's not usually. Then again, in a recent study when women had to choose from a penis in a series of 3D penis models, the results showed the ideal penis measured 6.3 inches in length and 4.8 inches around. They might be disappointed in real life, considering the average erect penis size is 5.2 inches long and 4.6 inches around. This data was from a 2015 study which importantly made sure the 15,521 participants couldn't do the measuring themselves. Numerous studies over the years, including a recent one in the Journal of Sex and Marital Therapy, show men all over the world often lie about their penis size, or at least tend to overestimate their penis size. We imagine many of you just did that when we started talking about penis length. Since we are so obsessed with male schlongs, such a penis size study has become controversial. Some of them have said penis size changes depending on the race of the person, but looking at studies from all over the world, it seems the average guys are usually somewhere between 5 and 6 inches, with outliers of course. Some erect penises are more like 3 and a bit inches, a micropenis, and there are men with much longer penises. It was reported not long ago that a guy in Canada was recorded as having an 18.9-inch penis. A fairly recent British TV program on Channel 4 called My Massive showed that men often struggle with their extra-large penises. Some studies have said there are countries where guys have longer penises on average, such as the Republic of Congo. The scientific journal Personality and Individual Differences said the men living there had an average penis size of 7.1 inches. That same study said in general men living in African nations had longer penises while men in Northeast Asia had smaller ones on the average, but that same study said men in Ecuador and Colombia were also quite a bit over the average. Other researchers have said race doesn't mean anything where penis size is concerned. One such study in the US said Asian American men, Black American men, White American men, Pacific Islander Hawaiian men, and Native American men all had pretty similar penis sizes on average, somewhere between 5 and 6 inches when fully erect. We guess researchers will have to disagree on this matter, but something they don't disagree on is that some men are showers and some are growers. If you walked into a male changing room, you'd notice that some men have dongs hanging out like genetically modified bananas. You look around and other guys have penises peeping out from their pubic bush. How can this be if males are all supposed to be a similar size? It just doesn't make sense. The answer could be the difference between showers and growers. According to one research study, if guys grow more than 1.5 inches, they are classed as a grower, and if they grow less than that, they're a shower. Many men grew 2.1 inches in the grower category, while in the shower category, they only managed to blast off a meager 1.2 inches. Sometimes the growers grew by more than 2 inches, and sometimes the showers barely budged. Out of 274 reported participants, 73 men were growers and 205 were showers. This has a lot to do with a difference in tissue elasticity and blood flow. Hey, put your ruler away, please. There's more you need to hear about the erection. Some of you will be very aware that the extended penis doesn't always stand up straight. When it looks like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the medical term is penile curvature. Your Leaning Tower of Penis, if indeed you have one, usually leans anywhere from 5 to 30 degrees to the side. It's more like a curve, but it's also like it's leaning. We could find no statistics about which side it leans to or how many men in total are leaners. Most have some curvature. If you're born this way, it falls into the congenital penile curvature category. It's not usually a cause for concern, but get it checked out if there's pain or if it really bothers you. It can also develop later in life, which is called Peyronie's disease. This is when scar tissue makes the penis bend, sometimes as a result of very aggressive monkey spanking or another penile injury, such as someone accidentally sitting on it while it's erect. Ouch! Again, if that causes issues, see your urologist. You might be handed a suction device to straighten things out. It seems we humans have evolved to have larger penises than our primate ancestors, which might be because women's vaginal size increased over millions of years to fit humans' bigger heads with their bigger brains. And men's willies also got bigger around that same time, so sexual satisfaction was suitable enough to cause ejaculation. Nature wants nothing more than us humans to enjoy sex, only because nature is selfish and it wants us to procreate and pass on our genes. Nature doesn't really care if the male is a grandpa and the female still studying in college. Even so, men tend to have sex less the older they get. In one study, it was discovered that people between 18 and 29 had, on average, sex 112 times a year, which is twice a week. It was 69 times a year for people who were between the ages of 40 and 49. There are many reasons why men might lose their ability to achieve an erection in older age. It's not certain that they will, but it sometimes happens due to a large number of health issues and also just because men at an older age produce less testosterone. Some men remember worrying about finishing too fast in their youth, and when they get older, it goes the other way. They can't even start. How cruel is life? Around 40% of men have some erectile problems when they're as young as 40, and by 70, about 70% of men have some sort of problem with erectile dysfunction. Another academic paper said 67% of men have erection issues by the time they're 50 years old, and 89% of those who reach 75 do. Even so, there's no reason with some medical intervention that men need to give up on erections. Ask Robert De Niro and Mick Jagger, who had kids in their 70s, or Al Pacino, who just knocked out another kid at 83 with his 29-year-old partner, Noor Al-Fala. Men can make babies up until they die. In 2010, a man in India named Ramajit Raghav had his first child at the ripe old age of 94. No one to let age hold him back, he had another kid 2 years later. In his 90s, he said he was having sex 3 times a day, which he put down to his diet of vegetables and grains. He died in 2020, aged 104, with an erection. Just kidding. But now we need to ask if a man can overdo it with his erections. Can you overuse and abuse your male member? The philosopher priest Thomas Aquinas called masturbation an unnatural vice. The American Puritans said it was evil and wicked. An 18th century Swiss physician named Samuel Auguste Tissot wrote that it could cause nerve damage or worse, insanity and blindness. But it seems he thought that about intercourse too. And what about the guy we mentioned at the start who apparently died from his erection? According to the National Survey of Sexual Health and Behavior, which interviewed 5,865 respondents in the U.S. aged 14 to 94, the average guy in the 18 to 59 age bracket only masturbated a few times a month, or maybe just once a week. Other research said 20% of American males masturbate more than 4 times a week. The average, according to another study, said it's 14.8 times per month on average. We imagine that 0.8 was such a disappointing endeavor. That's a joke again. Other people obviously do it a lot more. On a forum, one guy wrote, "It can vary slightly, but on most days I masturbate between 1 and 3 times per day." Another guy wrote, "For me on average about 3 times a day. Got a very high sex drive." These lean, mean, stroking machines are not doing anything dangerous. It comes to them naturally. They are built for it. It's thought the average man will have 3 to 5 erections per night's sleep. And if you count the entire day, the average is more like 10 or 20 erections. In the midst of puberty, males may indeed find they're getting stiffies much more frequently. Nature didn't make it harmful to us, although psychologically speaking, something like watching too much pornography could have some negative consequences. Each of these many erections a male has in one day will last for anything from 33 seconds to 44 minutes. There is a dark side though. Some men get what seems like eternal erections. This is a condition called priapism. It could mean staying hard for 2 hours or more, and the erection can get pretty painful. In fact, it can turn into a medical emergency, which if not dealt with may mean permanent damage to the penis. This has nothing to do with the male feeling hyper-aroused. It's about the blood being stuck in there. His glass of wine doesn't return to the decanter. If you find this happens to you, for maybe 2 or at worst 4 hours, you need to go to the ER. Preferably not in your jogging pants. It's hard to say if one of those long-standing erections can kill you or if they're just there when you die. Sometimes it's referred to as a death erection or angel lust, which, as we said before, can happen when someone is hanged. But they may start when people are alive. It's very rare, but we found a case in 2021 in which an American died in a hospital after a 3-hour priapism. He had many health issues and was diagnosed with COVID-19. The British tabloids also reported about another case in which a man in Nigeria was said to have died from a prolonged erection after taking medicine known as manpower. A Nigerian newspaper said he must have died from consistent hardness. This was the story we referred to at the start of the show. The man may have had priapism, but it's more likely the tabloids exaggerated his erection and he died from some other health issue. The odds of you dying by erection are about the same as you being abducted and examined by alien physiologists. There's absolutely nothing unnatural or dangerous regarding regular penile tumescence, so all you princes of the pocket rocket are very safe. Most of you people watching this will have experienced the topic of today's show. If you haven't yet, then statistically it's very likely you will. In fact, many males of a certain age will get down with this biological buzz on a daily basis, while females might not be as prolific in producing this heavenly stimulant that nature has bestowed upon us. We might be indebted to this fleshy machine that we call our body for giving us a natural high that for the most part doesn't cost us a penny. It offers some respite from a grind of work and the endless obstacles and what can sometimes be a difficult life. For that reason, we salute the orgasm, this wonderful gift Mother Nature has bequeathed to us. Let's now discuss the nitty-gritty of our gift in this episode of the Infographic Show, Female Orgasm versus Male. Before we start comparing orgasms, let's take a look at why we have them in the first place. Of course, we know that we have orgasms as part of the impetus to copulate with another person. This gift that makes the experience pleasurable, and in turn, we sometimes churn out other human beings and keep the species ticking over. Do all animals have orgasms though? That's something that scientists are not absolutely sure about, because we can't exactly ask a dog, a fish, or a proboscis monkey what it was like for them after they got it on. Scientists know by observing some animals' vocal cords and muscle contractions that they do seem to have this biological carnal payoff just as humans do. All female mammals have clitorises, and scientists have even stimulated non-human female primates in labs and given them orgasms. Perhaps that's the best job a monkey can get when sent to the lab for testing. They didn't say how they did the testing, however. So simply put, science thinks that most animals have sex because of the feeling they receive from it. Being the beneficiary of an orgasm is of course not the only reason animals do it. There may be power plays if there's a hierarchy, for instance, but it certainly acts as the main incentive. We don't know what it feels like for the animal, of course, but as one scientist talking to Popular Science says, it looks like a very pleasurable experience for some animals. Talking about our male feathered friends, he said the bird shudders its wings and clenches its feet as it ejaculates. splits. Who knows whether it feels like a human orgasm, but the external behavior looks like it. We're told animals don't have the brain capacity to plan for babies. Rats don't think when they're getting it on that they can't wait to see a little rascal ratty taking its first breaths in the world. They do it for pleasure. Humans are different because we are cognizant of the consequences of lovemaking if conditions haven't been met to prevent pregnancy. But some animals also masturbate as humans do. They may not fantasize as we do or spend time and energy watching others do it for their own gratification and enhanced stimulation, but some do enjoy pleasuring themselves. These animals include other primates, the animal champs of sexual self-gratification, elephants, walruses, bats, and turtles, among many others. Some animals, such as the brown bear and wolf, even practice autofellatio. Humans generally don't have the flexibility for that. We orgasm fans know that when it happens, it is pleasurable. Our muscles contract, we feel euphoria, and then we experience a period of relaxation. We also know that orgasms are not all made equal, with some feeling like a minor bump of pleasure chemicals in our brain, while others feel more like being maligned into the ecstasies of chemical heaven. We experience what is called a neuromuscular euphoria when our brain's pleasure centers are activated. This happens because of stimulation, but that stimulation can come in many ways. We'll cut this short because all the ways one can orgasm would take a while to explain. As you probably know, even stimulation of a nipple or other erogenous zone can create this sublime feeling. Some people even orgasm in their dreams, when thought alone is the main driver. There's even something called foot orgasm syndrome, which you can work out for yourself. It's unusual to say the least and apparently not pleasant. But for men, they mostly orgasm when their penis or scrotum is stimulated, and something called the pudendal nerve sends signals to the brain. It's the same for women when their clitoris is stimulated. Both sexes can orgasm from stimulation of their rectum when the pelvic nerve is stimulated. The hypogastric nerve sends signals from a man's prostate, while it does the same in a woman's uterus and cervix. For women, the vagus nerve comes into play when the cervix, uterus, and vagina is stimulated. These are what we might call the main bases. When orgasm is achieved, your brain is flooded with neurochemicals, and these activate what we call the brain's reward systems. It's these reward systems that motivate us to do certain things, not just have sex, but perhaps complete a marathon or get a job done. Sexual arousal affects many areas of the brain, such as the amygdala, cerebellum, pituitary gland, nucleus accumbens, and ventral tegmental area. If all that terminology means little to you, the Journal of Neuroscience simply tells us that sexual arousal in terms of brain patterns looks similar to what happens in the brain when one takes heroin. Thankfully, sexual stimulation isn't as expensive and doesn't produce severe withdrawal symptoms after long-term use. Wouldn't that make a dent in our masturbating regimen? For men, the result of this orgasm is usually the release of fluid through the penis. That may contain semen. Dry outcomes are possible too. All sorts of things come into play here, but usually with enough testosterone, the male can send his homemade gunge into a female orifice or simply into open space. Prior to this, the man is aroused and his penis becomes erect due to blood racing up the appendage's arteries at high speeds. The blood rush causes hardness, and the rest of the body tenses. Houston, get ready for liftoff. This may take a while, but orgasm can be achieved in as quickly as 30 seconds from the first arousal. At this time, the heart might be beating around 150 to 175 beats per minute, while parts of the body might be moving involuntarily. Nature now plays an ace card by secreting a pre-ejaculatory fluid in the penis, which helps protect the arriving sperm by changing the pH balance in the urethra. All you men know is that when it's time for liftoff, there's no going back, and this is called ejaculatory inevitability, a fine term if we ever heard one. Muscles around the penis and anus will contract rapidly, and you may push out your pelvis, and all those chemicals flood the brain and possibly cause one to grimace wildly like a madman in the grips of an ecstatic seizure. But it's not over yet. Men go through a pleasant recovery stage, a kind of easy come-down plateau after the rush, and they will see their member slowly reduce to its original, unimpressive state. Younger guys can sometimes recover from this in as little as 15 minutes, while older men may require hours to go through it all again. There seems to be a lot of content out there on what it feels like to have a female orgasm, and not much on the feeling of the male orgasm. As we said, orgasms are not all the same. Perhaps a seasoned masturbator on his 5th adult video session of the day might have a few substandard climaxes in that day's orgasm medley. But when one is orgasmed for the first time with the love of his life, the feeling might be somewhat more intense. One description we found online said this of his orgasms: like a tickle that creeps up from every corner of your body until you're desperate for it to stop, and also to continue forever, as if squeegees are scraping through your limbs. Like a gunshot, startling and discreet, leaving you with the vibrations, the trembling steel, the blowback. That sounds good. And the reason many men during sex or masturbation will be thinking about the next round before the current is even finished, but they often change their mind immediately after orgasm. That's just because they've achieved a satisfactory result and the brain is contented, at least for a while. Again, we have this feeling, so we'll want to do it again and again. Men are blessed with this. Some may argue that they were cursed, so that the merry-go-round of life continues to spin. It's as simple as that. With that in mind, let's turn to women. Women could still procreate even if they didn't have an orgasm. Women don't need to achieve orgasm to have babies, so why are they blessed with this blissful treatment from nature? There's been much research about this. First, we should say that 10% of women don't orgasm through sexual intercourse, or not at all, even with their own hands or certain purpose-made instruments. Some sources say it may be as high as 15%. You can read things like this on the web. I don't understand. I feel like less of a woman because I can't have an orgasm, and I want to so bad. I feel incomplete sometimes after sex. Vice magazine cited what it called the biggest ever orgasm study, which told us that nearly 37% of American women required clitoral stimulation to experience orgasm, while 18% said that vaginal stimulation did the trick. 9% of women in that study said that nothing worked, not clitoris rubbing, cunnilingus, pulsating plastic toys, or penetrative sex. 66.6% of these women did say they enjoyed their clitoris being stimulated, usually with an up and down rubbing motion with medium pressure of perhaps their own or their partner's digit. As for why women orgasm at all, science is not agreed on this. Some experts tell us that the reason is because orgasm will help a woman find a man of better genetic quality. Women may not orgasm with a man of lower genetic quality, and so we're told the fact that they can orgasm will weed out the weaker men. Not everyone agrees with this theory though. Some scientists compare the female orgasm to the male nipple, in that it serves little evolutionary function. Another theory is that orgasms in women will make them want to have sex with as many men as possible, and this increases the possibility of getting pregnant and promote what you could call sperm competition. Others suggest that her orgasm will help bond a pair and so ensure that the child has two parents. Orgasming in unison is quite a beautiful thing, perhaps sometimes even spiritual, and maybe that bonds a couple. This doesn't say much about many animals though that are hardly monogamous. It's an ongoing debate. Now, let's look at the female orgasm in terms of what happens physiologically. Like men, women's orgasms can be vastly different. Sometimes they may feel like they've been rocketed to the moon and back, and sometimes they're a mere fulfilling glitch in an otherwise unspectacular day. Like a man, the woman will experience a rush of happy chemicals to the brain. She may also contract and convulse and exhibit facial expressions that can border on being frightening. Again, we can't talk for all women and all orgasms. We can see what some women say about their orgasms though. One woman told Cosmopolitan, "The pleasure builds up and I feel it coming. Then an explosion of pleasure takes over everything from the waist down. The feeling trickles down through my legs and everything is completely relaxed." As you can see, this doesn't sound too different from what men say. It can also sound like more hard work though, as this woman explains. It's like a warm, tingling wave that starts at your center and just radiates outward. It can be frustratingly blissful as you start to build and then lose it, and then build again, and each time you start to climb that mountain, it becomes more intense and desperate. Perhaps we could say a man is a rocket with a certain trajectory, and a woman is more a complex machine with a few more moves before it achieves liftoff. The experts tell us that is correct, in that the female orgasm is more complex. She may have multiple orgasms or even what are called blended orgasms. If you've ever been the sole contributor of such an orgasm, you'll know it can last longer than the male orgasm and come with many shakes, involuntary convulsions, and perhaps the man being gripped onto tightly as she experiences her bit of physical bliss. Women can also have relaxation orgasms and tension orgasms, which should be self-explanatory. As you know, this orgasm might be clitoral, vaginal, or from G-spot stimulation, or even other happy zones such as lips or nipples. They can be grand, they can be minor, and they can move mountains or barely eclipse normality. Unlike men, women can have a remarkable variety of orgasmic experiences, which evolve throughout the lifespan, said one academic. A woman's erotic body map is not etched in stone, but rather is an ongoing process of experience, discovery, and construction. Now, men sound rather dull and predictable. We're also told that women become more lost in the moment during orgasm and the build up to it, that they block out everything else. Does that mean, like some men, they could be thinking about an upcoming football game or how they're performing during copulation? Yes, that could happen too, if she's not into it. But as one writer said, if she is, we lose our usual self-awareness and consciousness of other noises, feelings, and smells around us. Described like this, it sounds what we might call more full-on, as if the woman is not the astronaut taking off but the rocket itself. itself. It sounds like it could be almost an out-of-body experience that lasts longer too, about 20 seconds compared to that short blast that the men get. But in terms of what happens to our brains, we're not that different. Women might have different kinds of orgasms and essentially things might seem different, but that heroin hit we get is both present in men and women. We may be different in how quickly we get aroused, usually easier for men, but as Psychology Today tells us, the orgasmic experience is almost identical in both sexes. This means heart rate, blood pressure, tensed muscles, and the release of the love chemical oxytocin. Nature didn't get too complicated in this respect and made us both similar. We feel the same love buzz of an orgasm, and for this we can be thankful as we can empathize and know what joy we can give to each other. We're different in some respects though, in that men self-administer orgasms more often. In spite of some remaining social taboos preventing some women from pleasuring themselves as often as they might, the Kinsey Institute tells us that men are just hardwired to beat off. Call it practice for the big day that an orgasm might result in the beating heart of another wonderfully constructed human being. Picture a guy from the US who's decided it's time to spread his wings and get out of the town he's pretty much never left. He heads to some distant land he knows absolutely nothing about, and from the moment he gets there, he's somehow incredibly popular. No sooner than he's learned how to order a bottle of beer in the local language, he's hooked up with someone. But as some of you well-traveled viewers might know, what happens in the bedroom in the United States might not happen everywhere. This guy soon finds himself completely out of his depth and wondering what he's gotten himself into. Make sure you don't make the same mistake by watching this to find out some of the most confounding sexual practices you've ever heard of in your life. Let's start in Indonesia, where there's a pilgrimage people take to a place called Mount Kemukus, aka Sex Mountain. Every year, folks from all across Indonesia head to this part of Central Java for, you guessed it, sex. But it's more than just that, it's sex with a complete stranger. As the story goes, a long time ago a prince eloped from his town with a woman and tried to have a fun time there. They didn't quite finish the job and were chased away by soldiers and later killed. A kind of ritual has since emerged, which involves going there and meeting a stranger. Only this time they do what the prince and his lover couldn't and finish the job. And that's not all, they must continue to meet up and do so 7 more times throughout the year. If they end up fulfilling the quota, they'll then be blessed with good fortune, which we're sure is the only reason that men and women flock there, married or not, to hook up with a stranger. If you're thinking, no way that's a real thing, think again. In 2014, the governor of the province of Central Java laid down restrictions on what happens there. He banned the practice, saying it was not moral and there was a risk of contracting various diseases. He also said it made Indonesia look bad in the eyes of other countries. We'll let you decide if he was right about that last part. Still, Indonesian news reports in 2017 said the stalls and huts erected for the deed had reopened, and people were getting it on for good luck once again. You see, the business had been booming there before it was all closed down. Many people enjoyed the freedom of the ritual, and in turn, that provided lots of business for locals at Sex Mountain. When the ritual was banned, they lost their means of making money. The entry fee alone was around 50 cents, which doesn't sound like much, but on good nights there were about 8,000 pilgrims. In the past, when all huts and stalls weren't around, the people just did it behind trees, so you could call the enterprising locals a good thing for everyone. They even opened karaoke stalls to perhaps get people in the mood. You might wonder if the fortune actually does shine down on the pilgrims after their year of hooking up is over. Well, one woman who'd partaken told Australian News, "Praise be to God, after coming here, even though I have a few debts, my business is making a bit of a profit." Next up is a nomadic tribe in West Africa called the Wadabi. They don't have a written language themselves, but this word has been translated as people of the taboo. What's taboo in many parts of the world is having more than one marriage partner, which is known as polygamy. This tribe doesn't mind at all though. In fact, they embrace it. Every year, there's something called the Gariwal Festival, and during the big party that happens, the guys get dressed up to the nines to show their beauty. In fact, this tribe might just think it has the most beautiful men in the world. These people are also what you might call especially liberated, having no qualms about the very natural things that often makes Westerners blush. The men, with painted faces and feathers on their head, dance and look wonderful for the onlooking women in the tribe. It's said they take a kind of drink that helps them to dance for hours on end and also provides a hypnotic effect. It's like a very colorful beauty contest, because then all the women will choose the most attractive men. If the women are partnered with someone already, no problem, they can put themselves forward as someone who wants to steal another man as a new husband. If they don't want to go all out and steal a guy, they can just elect to sleep with him. If the guy walks past her, she just needs to brush him on the shoulder and they will be together. It totally doesn't matter about the previous partner. The guys don't get much say in the matter though. There are some rules, however. Usually when a woman is old enough, an arranged marriage will take place. Once she becomes pregnant, she goes to live with her mom and can't see the husband. After some time, she can go back to him, but she might just decide during the festival to sleep with another guy or steal one. One tribesman told National Geographic, "We get to go to the Jir wall for pleasure. I get a woman, then fine, it's a bonus." When a guy is incredibly hot, he's called Keijo Naado, hurting man, because he's so gorgeous it hurts to look at him. And just to set things straight, you have the word polygamy, which means marriage between more than two people. Then you have polygyny, which is when a man has more than one wife. And then there's polyandry, when a woman has more than one husband. It's not all that common, but it happens in various parts of the world. It's somewhat different from having a mistress, though. In Thailand, a man may often take what the Thais call Mia Noi, which literally means small wife, often called a second wife by Westerners. It's not actually legal in Thai law, but you have a documented marriage and you also have an undocumented marriage, in which a wedding ceremony still happens, but nothing is officially signed. In the past, when women have had fewer opportunities, this was widespread, but not so much now. In 2021, a video went viral in Thailand that features a man secretly marrying another wife. The guy in question, a cop, got the shock of his life when his real wife's mother-in-law walked into the ceremony and gave him a hard smack across the head. The attending monks were less than impressed, but despite the chaos, the ceremony went ahead. His real wife, who later showed news cameras their marriage certificate, was understandably angry, seeing as they'd been together 15 years and had 2 kids. Believe it or not, in the past, Thai women's magazines would say tolerating such a thing was the mark of a good wife. Maybe a small wife might be too much, but many Thai women have turned a blind eye to a man for having what you might call a bit on the side. That's what Thais call a gik. To understand this, you have to understand what some Thais now think of as outdated traditional values. These old values held that there was something called kula satri, which meant an ideal woman. She was demure, quiet, and certainly wasn't outwardly sexual. She wasn't even meant to have sexual thoughts. Meanwhile, male masculinity was defined by something called chai chatri. Under this, men were supposed to have irrepressible, uncontrollable sexual desires that could never be limited to their one spouse. It doesn't seem fair to most of us and wouldn't be seen as fair by most modern Thais either, but it still happens, quite a lot. This is evident in a Durex poll that had Thais top of the infidelity ratings, and before you ask, this has nothing to do with Thailand's notorious red light districts, which only actually make up a few streets in the entire country. It's actually these old cultural values that pervade most of the nation and lead to a culture of infidelity. Not to say women will tolerate cheating these days, or at least the majority of women won't. That's perhaps reflected in the fact that Thailand is arguably the leader in penis reattachment surgery. This has led to the international media asking why Thailand has an epidemic of penile amputations. There's even an old saying men sometimes say to other men, about which goes, "I better get home or the ducks will have something to eat." The men are often hypocrites too, given that many men have a zero tolerance when their ideal woman cheats. It can often and does regularly lead to him killing her. You might wonder why the second wives marry the guy. It's often down to financial security or just the security of keeping him. The first wife might not want to break up with the guy, either because women divorcing men is frowned upon in traditional settings, or because she has limited opportunities in life to take care of the family he'll leave behind. The woman whose mother whacked the cheating husband was well aware he had a gik, but she turned a blind eye to it. She told reporters, "I initially did not think that my husband would wed. Before the wedding, he was still staying at home with me and he told me he would be going out to work a night shift at his station." In some cultures, having more than one spouse is not just accepted, it's normal. Academic studies, for instance, have shown that in parts of India, China, and Nepal, a woman might have more than one husband. One such paper published in 2019 was titled "Marital Satisfaction and Well-Being Among Fraternal Polyandrous and Monogamous Tribal People of Kinnar." Fraternal polyandry is when one woman is married to 2 or more brothers, and Kinnar is a district in northern India. The paper concluded this after spending time with some of these families. The result, based on qualitative research, revealed that polyandrous couples' physical health, economical, and psychological well-being is better and they feel positive toward life. But why is that? The paper said those families felt secure together and they had financial security. It said a woman in those tribes with only one husband felt less financially secure than a woman who had married 2 or more brothers. The brothers also said they felt more secure. The Toda tribe of South India have also practiced these kind of marriages, but that may have now stopped. Still, it was explained that when a child is born to one of the brothers, he would hand the wife a bow and arrow and become the father of the child. If another child was born to another brother, he would do the same. In certain regions of India, Nepal, and Tibet, various practices of polygamy happened throughout history, although it's not common now. In a northern part of India called Jansarbawar, in some places a woman would marry the eldest son and then she immediately became the wife of all his younger brothers. It got tricky though, since the brothers could have more than one wife if their older brother was much older and the age difference was vast between his brothers and the wife. In that case, a brother could find his own new wife. If all the brothers stayed together with the one wife, none of them had any kind of exclusive right to her. All brothers were seen as equal and the kids looked on them as one father. In some countries in the recent past, such as parts of Tibet, the eldest brother would be seen as the main husband. A study published in 2008 said among the villages of Shigaz and Kamdo in Tibet, it was found that 20 to 50% of families were made up of a wife and two husbands. In some more remote areas, the researchers said 90% of the families were polyandric. To understand why, just imagine how difficult life is in some of those unforgiving mountainous areas. Weird to us maybe, but arguably an act of survival for others. Laws in Tibet have long since made it illegal, but the marriage will sometimes be documented between the wife and just the eldest brother. In most countries, a man's member is kept locked firmly behind closed doors, where it's barely noticeable unless he's wearing his favorite pair of tight Speedos. In some of the more remote parts of New Guinea, though, that's not always the case. There, the penis can have its own clothing accessory. This is called a koteka, which looks something like a gourd and covers the penis while being strapped to the waist. It can be long and thin or short and wide and can point in any direction that the wearer chooses. Obviously, when a man is working, a smaller koteka would be preferable. But if they're worn as a way of attracting a female, though, it's still up for debate. It might be only worn as a way of covering up as well as a way of looking good. Still, you have to wonder if some women favor a bigger koteka. The Sambia people of Papua New Guinea are heavily focused on what you might refer to as the warrior culture. When the boys are very young, usually around the age of 7, they're taken away from their mothers. In some ways, this is to toughen them up, and there are some comparisons to the training known as paides in the ancient Sparta. But with the Sambia, it's because the boys need to be detached from what's believed to be the contaminated blood of the mother. It's said that in each woman there's something called tingu, which has the power to manipulate men. When the boy gets a little older, he might be around younger women, who also have tingu in their blood. Since her tingu gets stronger during her menstrual period, during that time a woman is kept away from males completely. Okay, so if women have this sorcery that they can use to manipulate men, how do couples ever get together? Well, when the boys are old enough, they are taught how to safely have sex without being trapped by a woman's tingu. One way is to kind of disassociate himself from her and not get too heated in the act of sex. He should also try to prevent her from enjoying herself too much, lest she make him become sick and he possibly die. Once copulation is over, he goes through a bloodletting ceremony which is supposed to decontaminate him of her tingu. This happens until she gets pregnant, and then after she has the child, he can become a fully fledged warrior. In the 1990s, people who visited these very remote tribes said times were apparently changing though. Supposedly something called love marriage was occurring from time to time. And in those marriages, they didn't include all the fear and ceremony we've just described. In a 2006 book, the writer called this shift nothing less than revolutionary. While many of us take kissing for granted, this romantic, full-on, juices shared lips bitten kind of affair is utterly disgusting to people in some cultures. Researchers at the University of Nevada explained that when the Mehinaku of Brazil were asked about kissing, the general reply was that it was gross, with one asking, "Why would you want to share your dinner with someone?" Fair point, and let's be honest, no one wants to see anyone devouring each other's tonsils on the subway. In another paper, researchers found in some other cultures that there was no kissing at all. The Aka Pygmies didn't do it, and when questioned about sex, they said it was basically to make a child and nothing more. One person referred to sex as a night's work. According to the website This Is Africa, the Tonga tribe in Mozambique think much the same way, saying kissing is unhygienic, and when they see Westerners do it, they just think about someone eating dirt. And the last, but certainly not least strange romantic custom comes from Iran. There they have something known as Saihohu, which means a man and a woman can have a temporary marriage, explore each other's bodies, and if after some amount of time they decide they're not right for one another, they can annul the marriage with ease. You might ask why someone would do this, and doesn't it sound a lot like short marriages in the US? Well, for one thing, this marriage might only last for an hour, or perhaps a day, or maybe even a few days, which even in the US would be very unusual. You see, in Iran, just getting it on with someone you aren't married to is considered sinful and also illegal. That's one reason why men meet women online and then they head to the city, get a temporary marriage, book a hotel room, do what they have to do, then get divorced. As human rights advocates have pointed out, since not being a virgin before marriage is also considered sinful, this can have negative effects on women in the long run. It's also been called a way of having legal prostitution. The Iranian cyber police have said some websites will even help with a match and then do all the paperwork for the marriage. They can even book someone a hotel. It's like Tinder, Airbnb, and a priest all in the same app. who is supposed to provide a way for a woman to keep her chastity since she is technically married when she has sex, but she still becomes stigmatized after. This is what one young Iranian man had to say about the practice. "If I temporarily marry a young woman for 3 years and then divorce her, would anyone be willing to marry her? It would be impossible that any man would want to have a family with this woman." Still, some Iranian women have happily made use of the law. One woman told the New York Times about her relationship. "We went out a lot together and I didn't want to get into trouble. We wanted to have documents so that if we were stopped on the street, we could prove that we weren't doing anything illegal." She and her husband renewed their marriage after 6 months and then they did it again. We don't know how things ended though. A British-Canadian woman in 2015 talked to The Guardian about her dating experience in Iran. She said she was hounded by police and others while out in public with a man, asking how they knew each other and what they were up to. She said, "In public, I had to face the opposite direction and pretend to read." She got a temporary marriage and said it actually allowed her and her lover to live a normal life. "It was like a bubble. We were in love and no one bothered us. It was beautiful," she said. A month later, and she was on the plane out of there. But there's a happy ending. It took some time, but he eventually moved to the UK and they were remarried in London, this time for longer than a day. Testicles, balls, nuts, cojones, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnsons. Regardless of what you call them, you wouldn't be alive today without this sex organ. That being said, testicles are pretty odd. They're vital organs outside of the male body. One almost always hangs lower than the other, and they contain terabytes of genetic information. Let's start with a really weird testicle fact. All male animals have some form of testes, but the bush cricket might have the weirdest sized testicles in the entire animal kingdom. The bush cricket's testicles account for 14% of their entire body weight. Imagine if a 150-pound human had testes that were 14% of their body weight. That would mean their testicles would be almost 24 pounds. Those are some big balls. Sticking with the animal kingdom, male right whales have the largest testicles of any organism. On average, the right whale testicle weighs about 1 ton and can produce a gallon of semen. And if you thought having a 1-ton testicle was weird, humans decided to take whale testicles to a whole new level. The Icelandic brewing company Stodi has produced a beer for the country's midwinter festival. This festival is called Thori, and the beer they created for it is the Valgus 2 beer. You might be wondering what an Icelandic beer and testicles have in common. Well, prepare to get weird. The beer itself is brewed with the testicles of fin whales. The fin whale testes are smoked in dried sheep dung, added to the batch of beer, and brewed to infuse their flavor into the alcohol. So it would seem the weirdest thing about whale testicles is what humans do with them. And fin whale testicles are not the only reproductive organs that humans have made into a drink. In the 16th century through the 18th century, women in Canada would put beaver testicles in their tea or moonshine. It was believed that the beaver testes acted as a contraceptive. They didn't. All that people got from drinking those beverages was the weird taste of beaver in their mouth. Although we use the word testicles, which has Latin roots, other languages use the term for the male reproductive organ in different ways. For example, the word avocado is derived from the Aztec word for testicles. This is also true of the word orchid, which is derived from the Greek word for testicles. Humans have probably been comparing their testicles to nature since the beginning of time. And this brings us to a unique yet weird term that is sometimes used for testicles: blue balls. The colorful name is given to the sensation that occurs when a male gets sexually aroused but then does not have a release. This can lead to an uncomfortable throbbing sensation in the testicles. At no point in time do the testes turn blue, and if for some reason they did, that person should immediately go seek medical attention because they have much bigger problems than just a little discomfort. The scientific term for blue balls is epididymal hypertension. The biological reason this occurs is because the blood vessels of the testes expand to make room for increased blood flow in preparation for sex. This is how males get erections. However, the penis is not the only thing that can increase in size in preparation for intercourse. The testicles of human males can actually double in size when they're aroused. Think about how crazy that is. During sex, the testes can grow twice as large to accommodate all of the blood flowing to the genitalia. No wonder someone can sometimes feel lightheaded after sex. If you thought testicles growing twice their normal size was weird, this next fact will really surprise you. Sometimes the testicles can be hidden within the body. When a human male is developing in the womb, his testicles normally drop down from the male abdomen and form in the scrotum outside of the body. However, sometimes human males are born with both testicles still inside their body. Basically, they appear to be born with no testes at all. Of course, the testicles are still there, they just haven't descended yet. Sometimes when this happens, the testicles eventually descend on their own after a few months. Sometimes they don't. If the testicles do remain hidden in the body, they oftentimes need to be taken out through surgery. This normally resolves the problem and allows the testicles to hang freely. But like with any surgery, there are risks. A risk of having undescended testicles is that the person has a 40% higher chance of developing testicular cancer, even after they've been operated on. But why do the testicles sit outside of the body? They're incredibly sensitive and vital to reproduction of our species, so why aren't they more protected? The answer is both surprising and weird. The main purpose of the testes is to produce sperm. They actually serve no other purpose but to produce sperm and secrete hormones. In fact, the average human testicles produce around 200 million sperm each day. But why is the organ that ensures the continuation of our species so exposed? Why aren't they inside the body where they can be protected? The reason is because of temperature regulation. Sperm survive best around 93 degrees Fahrenheit. This is about 5 degrees cooler than the internal temperature of the body, which is 98.6 degrees. By having the testicles sitting just outside of the body, their temperature can be regulated. This is done by the scrotum tightening or loosening. When it shrinks, the testes are pulled closer to the body and therefore the temperature rises. When the scrotum stretches, the testicles descend away from the body and their temperature lowers. It's a balancing act of the testes to ensure they stay at a viable temperature for sperm production and storage. This dance of the testicles isn't just specific to humans. Every animal is slightly different. For example, elephant testicles are tucked up inside the body near the kidneys. So the thermoregulation process and temperature of the testicles is different from animal to animal. Sperm, for all intents and purposes, is a data storage device. It holds half of the genetic information to make an offspring in the form of DNA. This means that the average male ejaculation releases around 15.8 terabytes of data in DNA code, which makes the testes one of the largest data storage devices in the world. And if having two organs that act like computer hard drives between your legs isn't weird enough, most testicles hang at different heights. For most males, the left testicle hangs a little lower than the right. The reason for this is so the temperature of one testicle can be adjusted without affecting the other. If both testes were at the exact same height, they would be constantly touching one another, and there would be no way to make slight temperature adjustments to either side without affecting the other. Scientists have no idea why it is the left testicle that hangs lower for most males. It may be by random chance or a yet-to-be-discovered reason that will be just another weird fact to add to the list. It's important we continue to learn about the world around us, and that includes learning more about testicles. If we don't, some terrible mistakes could be made. For example, in the Middle Ages, men who wanted sons sometimes had their left testicles chopped off. It was thought that the right testicle held the sperm to create a male and the left testicle held the sperm that created a female. It was believed that by cutting off the left testicle, they were all but ensured to have a male offspring. As science advanced, we discovered that the Y chromosome that determines whether an offspring will be male or female can be found in the sperm of both testicles. Meiosis, which is the process of cell division to create sex cells such as sperm, occurs the exact same way in both testicles. Therefore, regardless of which testicle the sperm that fertilizes the egg comes from, there's a 50-50 chance that it carries the Y chromosome and that the baby will be a boy. You also have to wonder how awkward it must have been if a man in the Middle Ages cut off his left testicle and his next baby was a female. He must have felt rather silly for treating his testes in such a horrible way. Like all organs in your body, testicles make proteins for different functions within your cells. Interestingly, testicles have the most diverse proteins out of any organ in the body. It's been estimated that around 77% of all human proteins can be created in the testicles. Around 1,000 of these proteins are unique to the testes alone. This is interesting because the human brain only creates around 300 unique proteins. So it would seem that the testicles are sometimes more impressive than even the human brain, which might not come as a surprise for some of you when thinking about the males of our species. On a more serious note, a unique form of cancer that develops in the testicles can be incredibly dangerous for men. Testicular cancer occurs most frequently in men between 15 and 35 years old. This is a younger age group than most other cancers. Testicular cancer can be dangerous and even fatal. It's estimated that around 8,700 new cases of testicular cancer are diagnosed every year in the US alone. Of those 8,700 men, around 380 will die, so testicular cancer is not something to be taken lightly. The testicles are truly unique organs, and if nothing else, they're definitely weird. Whether it's their unique size and shape or the crazy things we do with them, who knows what discoveries the future holds for these male reproductive organs. You're born with it, and it'll stay with you for the rest of your life. You look at it every day, and you never get bored of it. It gives you intense pain and gives you immense pleasure. Sometimes when you look in the mirror, you're reminded that it doesn't last forever. You go on Instagram and you compare it with other ones, sometimes hoping you can change it, obscure it, give it a bit of a makeover. But whatever your body looks like, it's a marvel of engineering. It's actually almost difficult to comprehend. In the words of Shakespeare, the human body is unlimited in thinking, admirable in its shape and movement, angelic in action, godlike. Today, you're going to see just how your body is infinitely amazing. You might have heard that women are stronger than men when it comes to surviving disease and also in many other ways. But when it comes to brute force, men on average win hands down. But do you know why that is? It's said that on average, men's upper bodies have much more muscle mass than the average woman, as much as 75% more. Men have stronger lower body strength too. They grip harder, they throw harder, they punch harder, and they run faster. And we'll say this one last time, on average. We've all just accepted this as a fact of life. But what we don't ask is why? Why shouldn't women have evolved to be just as strong or stronger than men? Well, scientists say men evolved to fight, men are designed for combat. In some of the natural world, females are very often bigger than males, but that's because they're designed to carry lots of eggs. It's different for land-dwelling vertebrates, which includes humans. Those males evolved to be bigger due to competition with other males regarding finding a female to procreate with. All this fighting over females in the past has led to men being more violent overall. Men are responsible for something like 80% of violent crimes, while the prison population, at least in the US, is made up of 93.2% of men as of April 2021. Are men just naturally violent? It's like this, according to one scientist. Men are not more violent because they're stronger, but stronger because they've needed to be more violent over evolutionary history, which has shaped male psychology in all sorts of ways. So never mind how puny you are, you've been designed to be a fighting machine. But what about the brain? Do men have a different kind of brain? Okay, so we're walking on thin ice even bringing that up. We don't want to offend anyone, so we'll remind you not to shoot the messenger. If you're a scientist and you say that men and women's brains are fundamentally different, you might be accused of neurosexism. But quite a few studies have shown that men's brains work better at completing spatial and motor tasks. They might look at a puzzle and have to think about how a shape can be manipulated to fit it in the right hole. And according to those studies, men will on average be better than women at this. Still, other scientists have called this a myth and indeed a kind of neurosexism. So the jury is still out on that one. One thing we do know for sure is men's brains are bigger, but that doesn't have any effect on intelligence. Men might have bigger parts of the brain for a reason, but again, this is still a controversial issue. Some studies have found that the parts of the men's brains are bigger which are associated with the survival instinct and reacting to stimuli. Women might have bigger parts of the brain that are related to language and emotion. Okay, so now we think we should get down to business and talk about that taboo subject of the male phallus, the penis as your doctor will refer to it. It's a pretty amazing thing to behold, even if it sometimes gets in the way of having a quiet life. First of all, it's a hard worker. It even does the night shift. Did you know that the average man will get 3 to 5 erections during the night, often lasting as long as 30 minutes? What's up with that? It's not as if you need it in your sleep. The medical term for this phenomenon is nocturnal penile tumescence, something we imagine you'd never say to your partner after she asks what that pressure is on her leg. Don't worry, darling, it's just nocturnal penile tumescence. Basically, you get wood when your parasympathetic nervous system is stimulated. Sights, touch, memories, even sounds make this happen. Arteries in your pecker dilate, blood flows in, and hey, presto, you got liftoff. The penis is not a muscle, by the way. It's been described as more like a sponge that gets bigger when it fills with blood. When you're sleeping, much of your body might slow down, but the parasympathetic nervous system is still switched on. You aren't getting a stiffy because of dreams and because of that leg of your lover. It's just the fact that your nervous system is functioning well. Why it happens other than that is still a mystery to science. One scientist said nighttime erections serve no purpose whatsoever and are merely a byproduct of the nervous system. So don't worry about it if every time you wake up you feel like you have a Toblerone stuffed into your underwear. Okay, so now to the question you all want answered. Is there such thing as a grower and a shower? Do some men walk around with great big dongs while others walk around with a lip balm in their pants? Well, just remember that a lip balm can almost double in size with a bit of rubbing. There are such things as growers, and studies have proven it. If you have a lip balm kind of John Thomas, it's very likely you'll grow a lot more than the guy with a flaccid Toblerone. One study showed that out of 2,770 men with small flaccid willies, their growth was 86% when fully erect. Meanwhile, the bigger boys only showed a growth of 47%. Basically, things even out when men get down to business. As the saying goes, don't judge a book by its cover. Scientists say you cannot assess the size of a man's wiener until you see it in all its glory. Some studies have shown that about 80% of men are growers and the rest are showers. Sticking with subjects that make people blush, you might not know that men have a G-spot. Yep, just tunnel about 2 inches into the rectum and you'll find it there. It's at a place called the perineum between the scrotum and the anus, and with a bit of pressure, not too much, it can be activated. It might also be stimulated when you're taking a poo, giving you the feeling of poophoria. There are cases of men having what's been called defecation-induced orgasms. Dropping the kids off at the pool can be ecstatic, but usually they'll have to be at least one very big kid. You also might not know that men can produce milk and so can breastfeed. Yeah, that's true. Although the man might have to take some hormonal drugs. In 2002, there was a guy in Sri Lanka who fed his 2 babies because his wife was dying. He stepped in and saved the day. It usually doesn't happen without any drugs, although certain things can happen in the male body that makes it produce more of the hormone prolactin. One of those things is starvation. When women are pregnant, the levels of prolactin in your body increases, but sometimes it does in men too, although that's an anomaly, not an evolutionary requirement in nature. Due to hormones, men tend to stink a lot more than women. On the other hand, women are better at picking up the scents. According to science, the smell of a man gives women a better idea of who they might be mating with. It's said women find men with high testosterone more attractive, and they can sense this with their olfactory sense. Research has shown that single men tend to have higher testosterone levels than men with partners, which makes sense in evolutionary terms. Okay, on to something new. Something that might stop men and women arguing about turning up or down the heating in the house. Did you know that men generally feel a little bit warmer than women? You probably do know that, because there's no doubt you've been in a situation where she's cold and you're not. There's a simple reason for this other than what you're wearing. Men generally have more muscle mass, and because of that, they burn more calories to fuel those muscles. This creates heat, and when heat evaporates, it warms the skin. As one doctor puts it, men have their own little heaters. Studies shown that women tend to feel the most comfortable in a room that's slightly hotter than a room men feel the most comfortable in. So don't argue, just accept you're different in this respect. And when it comes to skin, men's skin is anywhere from 20 to 30% thicker than the skin of a woman. Men also tend to have firmer skin, which becomes more apparent in older age. This is why women usually get wrinkles before men, and so men often look younger than women as they age. Sorry, women. As one scientist put it, female skin thinning occurs at a significant pace after menopause. Hence, signs of skin aging in older women are generally more pronounced as compared to men in the same age group. Still, there are many factors such as work, stress, and how many days you've been under the sun trying to get a tan or grow some rice. Talking about later in life, men can actually get something that's not unlike PMS. It's called irritable male syndrome, and it usually happens when a man ages and his testosterone levels drop. It might happen at any time in life since testosterone levels do change in men for various reasons. They might suddenly drop and then they might increase, even within one day. When this happens, men might experience fatigue, depression, low self-esteem, anger, anxiety, and moodiness. When it does happen in older age and the levels seem to drop for good, that's called male menopause. Still, with some men, they have a gift that keeps on giving. They can have children at a very late age, even if they might not be the bull on the springs they used to be. In 2010, a guy in India named Mr. Ramajit Raghav had cause to celebrate. He had a child. The strange thing is, he was 94. And get this, he had another child 2 years later. It's actually not uncommon for men to have kids when they're still in their winter years. The age-defying Rubber Legs lead singer of the Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger, had his 8th kid when he was 73. A man might have less chance of having a kid at an older age, but he can still produce testosterone in sperm cells even though he might be walking around with a Zimmer frame. Still, as he approaches those winter years, there will be some changes. He might not produce as much sperm as he did before, and those sperm might not be as good at swimming as they used to be. It's usually in the 40s that the quality of sperm takes a hit. Older men might also produce sperm that can lead to abnormalities in the child. No man likes losing his hair, but it's a fact of life that many do. Word on the street is bald men tend to be more sexual due to what some people have said is the increase in testosterone. But is this a myth or is it true? Firstly, don't worry, baldies. When it comes to attraction, studies have shown that there are many more things women think about than the mass of hair on a man's head. Some studies have even shown that bald men are seen as more masculine and attractive to women, but that's debatable. Jason Statham's bald head isn't exactly comparable to a man who has a very unsuccessful comb-over. Studies have shown that women tend to be attracted to guys that have shaved all their hair off rather than guys that let hanging curtains decorate their head. As for baldness being related to virility, it's a complex matter. Castrated men who have hardly any testosterone can still have hair, while guys with hardly any hair might have low testosterone levels. Genes are what make their hair fall out, not testosterone. In conclusion, if you're bald, it's your mom and pop's fault, not the fact that you're a super sexual being. What about the Adam's apple? Why do men tend to get bigger ones? The part of the body is made of cartilage and it gets bigger when you hit puberty. Men usually have a larger larynx, an Adam's apple, and that's why they usually have deeper voices. But with both men and women, how large those things grow is down to hormones. Hence, some voices are deeper than others in both men and women. As for why men tend to grow bigger voice boxes in Adam's apples, some scientists say they developed this deeper voice to attract the opposite sex and give off more threatening sound to male rivals. As of 2021, only 16 of the U.S.'s 50 states have laws requiring that sex education taught in schools be medically accurate. comprehensive sex education is sadly lacking across the United States, and frankly, a lot of other nations could also stand to do better when it comes to sex ed. After all, it isn't all about the birds and bees, it's also about better understanding yourself and your body. That's why we're here today, discussing a part of the body that rarely feels welcome in the average discussion: the foreskin. We're going to discuss everything you've ever wanted to know about foreskin, but we're afraid to ask, including its composition, purpose, and any other miscellaneous questions that might be troubling you. Let's start with what exactly a foreskin is. Foreskins are present on the penises of all mammals, though for some species they're referred to as penile sheaths, when the penis retracts all the way into the body while flaccid. Technically speaking, foreskin is a part of a larger organ family known as prepuce, which in layman's terms is basically skin that covers a sensitive sexual organ. The clitoral hood of the vagina also falls under the prepuce umbrella. But let's get back to the foreskin. This often misunderstood organ is deceptively complex in a structural sense. While it's superficially a continuation of the skin of the shaft of the penis, it's actually a double-layered amalgamation of skin, neurons, and smooth muscle tissue, blood vessels, and mucosal membrane. Developed over millions of years of evolution, it's what evolutionary biologists call a complex penile morphology. And if you ask some researchers, the importance of the foreskin in an evolutionary sense can't be oversold. According to a group of Dutch sexologists from the Royal Dutch Medical Association in 2010, a foreskin is a, quote, complex, erotogenic structure that plays an important role in the mechanical function of the penis during sexual acts, such as penetrative intercourse and masturbation. The inside of the foreskin houses the all-important mucous membranes, similar to the inside of the mouth or the eyelid. This contains the glans penis, colloquially known as the head. It also serves to protect the urinary meatus, which is the opening at the end of the urethra, sometimes colloquially known as the pee hole. The inner and outer foreskin is connected by tissue known as the mucocutaneous zone. When a child is first born, the foreskin is tightly connected to the glans, but typically loosens up and gains mobility over the glans when you mature, normally during puberty. The piece of highly vascularized tissue, meaning featuring a large number of blood vessels, that first connects the foreskin to the glans is known as the frenulum. But that's not all the frenulum does. It also connects the two layers of the foreskin together, and when the penis isn't erect, the frenulum tightens to narrow the opening of the foreskin. It's all a very delicate process. It's important to note that, as with anything involving the human body, while it's easy to speak in broad generalities about the nature and behavior of the foreskin, you'll find there's a lot of variance between individuals. For example, as an adult, the foreskin will remain over the glans when the penis is flaccid. However, when an adult gets an erection, it's possible the foreskin might retract back over the glans. The degree to which this happens tends to vary a lot between individuals. Some may notice very little visible retraction at all, and some may retract entirely, leaving the glans fully uncovered. Finally, on the subject of the foreskin's physical composition, it contains a thin sheath of muscle tissue known as the dartos fascia. This muscle tissue exists within the foreskin, the penile shaft, and the scrotum. Crucially for the foreskin in particular, though, the dartos fascia contains elastic fibers that form what's known as the whorl at the opening of the foreskin. In infants, this can be used as a kind of sphincter that prevents urine from leaking out of the aforementioned urinary meatus at inappropriate times. That's probably everything you needed to know about what exactly a foreskin is, but the beauty of evolution is that every enduring biological feature is there for a reason. Well, mostly, but we'll get to that later. Let's talk about why people have foreskin. The exact nature of the foreskin's benefits is a surprisingly controversial subject. Like everything, it's a question of weighing the advantages against the costs. The World Health Organization says that possible purposes include keeping the glans moist, protecting the developing penis in utero, or enhancing sexual pleasure due to the presence of nerve receptors. If you're at the legal age of consent, it's likely that you found the last one on that list particularly appealing. The science behind this is equally as intriguing. Due to its highly concentrated cluster of sensory neurons, the foreskin is incredibly sensitive to touch. It contains as many as 20,000 sensory receptors, and some studies have even shown that the least sensitive part of the foreskin is often more sensitive than the rest of the penis. To be more specific, the foreskin contains a special kind of sensory receptor known as Meissner's corpuscles, involved in fine touch sensitivity. However, Meissner's corpuscles are pretty much irrelevant in adults, as their concentration decreases following adolescence, and the concentration of Meissner's corpuscles in the foreskin is actually lower than the concentration in the fingertips. It may actually surprise you to know that there isn't a broad consensus on the benefits of foreskin in adulthood. A number of studies have provided evidence contrary to the idea that keeping your foreskin provides increased sexual sensitivity. A 1998 study from scientists Moses and Bailey said, "It's not been demonstrated that the foreskin is associated with increased male sexual pleasure." Even more damningly, in 2017, a study by researchers Morris and Krieger concluded, quote, "Thus, speculation and outdated opinion pieces claiming special properties of the foreskin, such as in penile function and masturbation, should be viewed with skepticism." None of this is good news for people with foreskins. While some will swear by the sexually advantageous properties of foreskin, others argue that its function is actually vestigial. What does vestigial mean exactly? To keep it simple, it basically means that it's a physical quality that was once evolutionary advantageous, but no longer has any real function. It just hasn't been bred out by natural selection yet. In the words of the father of evolution, Charles Darwin, an organ, when rendered useless, may well be variable, for its variations cannot be checked by natural selection. As we discussed earlier, variation is extensive in foreskins. Our friends Morris and Krieger return for what could be the death blow, stating the variability in foreskin size is consistent with the foreskin being a vestigial structure. But it's one thing to be useless, quite another thing to be potentially harmful. Before we proceed, it's worth discussing some of the potential downsides of having a foreskin into adulthood. Foreskins increase the risk of urinary tract infections across the board, which can result in painful inflammation and extreme discomfort for the sufferer. But that's actually more the mild end of the spectrum. A lot of people suffer from foreskin that's too tight to retract, a condition known as phimosis. This can make the penis more difficult to clean and can lead to the accumulation of smegma, an unpleasant cheese-like substance that's secreted by the penis. If unchecked, this can lead to a further condition known as balanitis, an uncomfortable and persistent inflammation of the glands. In extreme cases, this can even increase the risk of penile cancer. Keeping your foreskin can also put you at risk of the frenulum breve. This condition results from the frenulum being too short to allow the foreskin to fully retract, leading to discomfort and pain during sexual intercourse. But it's not just that. While many have possibly erroneously claimed that keeping your foreskin can offer sexual benefits, it can also offer a huge drawback: increased transmission of sexually transmitted diseases, or STDs. It puts people at a particular risk of contracting HIV due to the larger surface area of inner foreskin and the high concentration of Langerhans cells, giving the virus numerous opportunities to infect its victims. Of course, not everyone watching this video will have a foreskin. Some of you won't even have penises. But having a penis doesn't necessarily mean you have a foreskin. Some people can have their foreskin removed for medical reasons, like the factors we just discussed. But a decent portion of the population were circumcised during infancy. It's likely because they're part of a group which practices religious or cultural circumcision. The faiths that most commonly practice this are Judaism, Islam, and even some denominations of Christianity, including the Eritrean Orthodox Church, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, and the Coptic Orthodox Church. If we can shift briefly from a biology lesson to a history lesson, this tradition is truly ancient. A 4,400-year-old Egyptian bas-relief from 2400 BC depicts someone receiving a flint knife circumcision, which is believed to be the oldest historical depiction of circumcision. Though to be fair, the love of foreskin is also an ancient tradition. The Romans were great admirers of foreskin, with a Roman consul having even been put to death for getting a circumcision, though anti-Semitism might have been at play there too. Some ancient Greeks also tied up their foreskins during the Olympics, believing it was uncouth to show their glands. Circumcision is a topic that's so loaded it's difficult to discuss in totality in this video. While circumcision can avert some of the disadvantages of foreskin we mentioned earlier, it can come with its own risks. Circumcised people have been known to experience higher degrees of erectile dysfunction than those who still have foreskins, according to some studies, and losing your foreskin is even said to increase your chance of developing a psychological disorder known as alexithymia by 60%. Alexithymia stunts a person's ability to recognize and express emotions, often lowering their quality of life as a result. But there are also considerably heavier risks on rarer occasions. It's estimated that 100 infants die due to circumcision-related complications every single year, largely thanks to issues involving blood loss and infection from botched surgeries. There's even a movement of people circumcised shortly after birth that resent being given the surgery without their consent. This cause calls itself the inactivist movement, and they decree penile circumcision as barbaric, on par with female genital mutilation. We don't personally intend to take a side on this particular topic. And finally, we'd be doing you a disservice if we didn't share some strange, miscellaneous facts about foreskin and circumcision with you. You're probably wondering what actually happens to all the foreskins removed during circumcisions. and you might be surprised to know that some of it gets repurposed for use in medical procedures or commercial products. Scientists can use baby foreskins to produce acres of skin for use in transplants and skin grafts for people like severe burn patients. Baby foreskin also produces fibroblast cells, which in turn produce collagen, elastin, and hyaluronic acid, all skin-affirming proteins. As such, baby foreskins are a common ingredient in anti-aging cosmetic skin creams, even some endorsed by the queen of television herself, Oprah. One study in the US also found that despite the sexual benefits offered by foreskin being called into scientific question, 85% of the women reviewed preferred uncircumcised men in the bedroom. For clarity, everyone questioned said they had sexual experiences with both circumcised and uncircumcised men. Of course, with any individual study like this, it's always worth taking the results with a pinch of salt. Could the male body get any weirder? Yes, it can. From farts to malfunctioning penises, these are going to be some of the weirdest facts about the male body you've ever heard. You can probably guess that the male body is more flatulent than the female body. But did you know that certain studies have actually quantified that men fart more than women? The reasons for this are crazy. At a basic level, this might just have to do with males being immature and finding farts funny. But there could be a biological reason for it as well. Some researchers suggest that males are more flatulent because of their diets or that they tend to eat faster than females. Others think men fart more because their body has a larger gastrointestinal tract than the female body does. It could also be due to the amount of air that men swallow while eating that may influence their abundance of flatulence. Really, doctors aren't quite sure why men fart more often than women, but in a crowded room, this fact can get really smelly. However, speaking of smelly, even though men tend to fart more than women, they are not the ones with the smelliest farts. In a study conducted by gastroenterologist Michael Levitt, it was found that female flatulence is the smellier of the two sexes. This suggests that a male's fart might contain less sulfur molecules than their female equivalent. This is what gives the farts their unpleasant smell. The penis is a weird organ all by itself, but there are aspects of the male reproductive system that are not only weird, but a bit unbelievable. Take erections, for instance. One of the molecules associated with causing the penis to fill with blood is nitric oxide. It does this by relaxing certain muscles in the groin and increasing arterial blood flow to the penis. This is weird because nitric oxide works similarly to nitrous oxide, which is used by doctors as an anesthetic. So the male body causes the penis muscles to relax and go to sleep, similar to the way a dentist uses nitrous oxide to make their patient do the same thing. It might seem odd to relate dental surgery to getting an erection, but the molecules used in both actually serve similar purposes. Speaking of oral, the male body seems to have a weird preference for this form of sex. A study in the Journal of Sexual Medicine that surveyed 1,661 men about their penis size discovered something really strange. First things first, the study found the average penis length of a human male is somewhere between 5 and 5.5 inches. The smallest in the study was 1.5 inches long, while the largest was 10.25 inches long. The penis can be all sorts of different shapes, which makes this part of the male body one of the stranger ones. But there are several diseases associated with this organ that can be cause for alarm. Erectile dysfunction is not necessarily harmful, but it can be an indicator of a much bigger problem in the male body. Life-threatening conditions such as heart disease, high blood pressure, and high blood sugar levels might all be cause of erectile dysfunction. And since these can all be life-threatening, it's always good for a male to check in with their doctor if they're experiencing problems down there. The malfunctioning penis might seem unrelated to these other conditions, but everything is connected in the body. Doctors have found correlations between erectile dysfunction and diabetes as well. And although we often think of ED as being a problem for elderly men, it's not always true. Around 30 million men of different ages in the United States alone suffer from erectile dysfunction. But this isn't the only disease that is unique to the male reproductive organs. Some men suffer from Peyronie's disease, which causes plaque and tissue buildup around the penis. This can make the penis curve in even more surprising ways. However, the buildup of tissue can also make erections incredibly painful. And if the pain wasn't enough, Peyronie's disease can also cause the penis to become less flexible and shorter. It normally occurs as a result of injuries to the penis. One thing that might be even weirder than the penis itself is the cremaster muscles. These muscles cause the testicles to move up and down. This is done so the testes can be pulled closer to the body when they get too cold. The crazy part is these muscles can be triggered involuntarily by just the right touch to the leg. If a man is stroked along their upper thigh, the cremaster muscles contract, causing the testicles to move. There's no positive or negative effect to this action, it's just a reflex, like when the doctor hits that area below your kneecap. Thankfully, doctors do not check a male's reflexes by stroking their leg and observing their cremaster muscles in action, as that would be a little weird. And speaking of testicles, there is a reason why such important structures are outside of the male's body. There is a certain cost-to-benefit ratio when it comes to the location of the testes. On one hand, they're part of the body that produces sperm, which allows the male to reproduce. This means that they should be protected at all costs. On the other hand, testicles need to remain a certain temperature in order to produce healthy, viable sperm. The internal temperature of the body is not conducive to this process. Therefore, the testes are outside of the body, and whenever they need to be warmed up, the cremaster muscles tense, leading to the testicles being pulled closer to the groin. Sperm itself is full of weird facts, but ejaculation of the substance from the body is even weirder. In each ejaculation, there are around 100 million sperm. That is a huge number, and if you were to count to 100 million without any breaks or sleep, it would take you over 3 years, and all of that sperm is forced out a thin tube at a high speed. How fast are the sperm blasted out of the male when he ejaculates, you might ask? The answer is a staggering 28 miles per hour. That is faster than the speed limit in many residential neighborhoods. This means that every time a male ejaculates, his sperm could receive a speeding ticket. Obviously, that would never happen, but it's still pretty crazy to think about. When a man is having sex and he ejaculates, his sperm is being shot into his partner at the top speed of a running bull elephant. Granted, the sperm are much smaller than the elephant, but it's still nuts. Once the sperm is ejaculated, their speed slows down almost instantaneously, and they continue their journey through the female's reproductive system. It's pretty much guaranteed that all 100 million will die, as only one can fertilize the female's egg, and that doesn't even always happen. The time it takes from ejaculation to when it reaches the egg can be anywhere from 30 minutes to 24 hours. Luckily, the male body can produce around 1,500 sperm a second, so even after shooting 100 million of them out during ejaculation, it only takes a relatively short amount of time for the body to create enough sperm to go again. Oftentimes, we think of the male body as being strong, but it's weird how vulnerable it can be to certain types of injuries. On average, men get hernias more often than women, and there's a good reason for this. There's a weak spot in the male body located near the inguinal ring. This is the entrance to where the intestines are located in the body. When too much pressure is applied to the male's midsection, it can cause fat or part of the small intestine to pop out of the weak spot. When this happens, a bulge in the groin area occurs, which is what a hernia is. Women also have an inguinal ring, it's just stronger and not as large as in the male. This is why, on average, the male body is more prone to getting hernias than the female body. As a side note, most hernias are caused by lifting heavy objects and putting a lot of strain on the midsection of the body. However, if a male pushes too hard while trying to relieve himself on the toilet, that force of the muscle contractions could also cause a hernia. So, if you're male, don't push too hard when going number 2. Your inguinal ring will thank you. Moving away from the groin and midsection of the male body, there are some weird things happening around the head. Research suggests that certain proportions in the male face are important to what we perceive as a masculine appearance. Most men have bigger jawbones and cheeks than females. These are both obvious attributes that contribute to the masculine look of the male face. However, there is a less obvious and more strange feature that might have some connection to masculinity. Males tend to have thicker eyebrows than females. It's kinda crazy that men's bushy eyebrows are one of the features we attribute to masculinity. The female features of having higher, thinner eyebrows are considered to be more feminine even on a male face. In fact, a study published in the Frontiers of Psychology found that 3 main characteristics attributed to masculinity are eyebrow thickness, jawbone prominence, and face height. This is not to say that there aren't male bodies that have thin eyebrows, unpronounced cheeks, or a weak jawline, just that on average, the male body has more of these masculine features than the female body does. This brings us to an important part. Although all humans belong to the same species and are biologically much similar than they are different, each male body is unique in a weird way on its own. Now watch Weird Facts About the Male Body, or check out even weirder facts about the male body.